This exciting story begins in an unusually beautiful place. And vibrant, surrounded by flowers. Ed approaches Emma, taking her hand tenderly, and tells her he needs to tell her something important. Ed said that as soon as he started working here. He always looked at Emma and couldn't finish the sentence because he started to worry a lot. There was a voice in Emma's thoughts that encouraged her and gave her hope that Ed would say those precious words. But the boy was so shy that he came up with the most banal excuse: to say that he was always contemplating an incredibly beautiful sunset. The girl was disappointed. This was not exactly what she wanted to hear from Ed. She would really have to take the initiative herself. Emma shyly asked if he had said everything he wanted to, feeling the hope that he would agree to something important. Or perhaps this would be their last encounter. Ed didn't know why Emma came to that conclusion. The girl still had a question in mind about whether she needed to confess her feelings to the boy. But Ed himself, however, took his will in his fist and decided to take a responsible step. He confessed his feelings to Emma and told the girl that he loved her at first sight. Emma smiled with happiness and shared with Ed her mutual love for the boy, because it had been in her heart for a long time. But then Emma suddenly wakes up in bed with a man who, at first glance, looks about 40 years old. Looking at the man, the girl thought she had returned. In the room where there was a girl with a man, there was a boy in the bed. Apparently, he was very tired, since he was sleeping sitting in a chair. Emma looked at the boy and was indignant because he was sleeping. The girl choked strongly and called Mason, the guy who was sleeping in the chair. Emma, screaming that she was dying. She saw a boy running towards her. The girl covered her face with her hands and laughed stifledly at Mason. The events move to a beautiful autumn park, where Emma greets an elderly grandfather walking with the help of a cane. The heroine leans against the entrance door and exhales the oxygen collected heavily in her soul. The girl looks very sad. Her body is still breaking apart, and from her facial expression, it can be understood that she feels a lot of pain. But then Emma sees Mason, and she is filled with happiness. She is very happy to see him. The boy says that this time it wasn't easy. He is glad that everything ended quickly, because he thought they would stay up late again. The heroine started to tease Mason, asking him if that was what interested him the most. The boy was perplexed by how she managed to force the shy old man, Mason, to confess to his lover. To which Emma replied that this is why she was a master of dreams, and that he couldn't do any of that. Mason started saying he was jealous, and that if he were a native of Frodberg, he would also boast about some ability. Perhaps he would work for the Gryden Knights. Emma asked if the boy was implying that he didn't like working with her, but Mason started denying everything and said he just had to say it. On the southern island, in Frodberg, a girl named Bella said that for an unknown reason, whether it was the powerful mana permeating the island, or the divine blessing of the inhabitants of the Holy Land. One of the residents said that every person born here had their own unique ability. Another resident said that every ability was different in both nature and practicality. The resident said that they did not provide the same benefits as real magic. People born in Frodberg were highly valued for their abilities. Because of this, peace and prosperity did not last long on this island. The ruler angrily said that from now on all Frodberg natives would be property of the empire. Each one will be given new names and will be called into service as masters. The girl talks about her unusual name. Emma, meaning dream, full of precious fragments of reality. This name was given to her by her mother. Emma said that, like her name, she was capable of fulfilling a person's fantasies that were impossible in reality, by invading their dream through touch. But above all, the girl is known as a dream master, who helps people's dreams come true, at least in their dreams. Emma thought that, thank God, at least she wasn't a slave, thanks to a good number of orders. She could already forget about hunger. This time, too, she was well paid. Although not in vain, she exerted herself. The girl thought, this makes her very happy. People dressed in black robes entered the house and asked who was practicing the dream master. Mason replied that the workday was over for today and wished them all the best. One of the people in robes starting a conflict, calling the guy ignorant and asking if he knew who he was talking to. But then one of these mysterious people made a signal with his hand. Be quiet so that he would stop talking. At that moment, Emma had a question in her head about why there was so much noise. One of the people in robes asks for help waking someone up who cannot wake up. The man who was asking suddenly removed the hood of his robe and said that his son perhaps had fallen into an eternal sleep, and he needed help. 500 years ago, the greedy ruler of the great empire, Lucas V, declared war on Frodberg, a real mana mine located on the border with the continent. The people had fierce battles. Scarlet blood soaked the ground, and heartbreaking screams permeated the air. The strongest sorceress of Frodberg, seeing her home turn into a hell on earth, cried frantically that they were all animals born without heaven's blessing. Lucas V did not hear these words, considering them dying delirium. But soon the empire plunged into chaos. All descendants of the imperial family born after these events were extremely weak. And the day they reached adulthood, they fell into a deep sleep. This sleep continued until old age and lasted until death. As a result, the imperial family lost all its heirs and disappeared. Duke Charles ascended the throne, who managed to win the trust of the people in those turbulent times. He changed his surname to Grand and began to rule the empire. It turns out that this ruler was the man in the robe standing in front of Emma. And Mason, the girl thought who was still sleeping. But unfortunately, it was not a dream. The emperor suggested setting aside formalities and getting down to business. Mason whispered in Emma's ear that they were the same Gryden Knights. And the girl said she didn't care who they were, since they were in trouble. Then the heroine sent Mason to get tea. The emperor asked Emma if she thought she could wake this girl from her sleep. The girl asked the ruler if he was now talking about the crown prince. He confirmed and added that the doctor told him his condition was very similar to a coma. But he was convinced that it was a dream. The girl replied that she most likely could not help, since direct contact with a person is necessary for her power to work. Emma asked how she, an ordinary artisan, could touch His Highness. Wouldn't that be a great insult? The emperor replied that of course. This was a problem, but that nothing could be done. The man said that Emma was the last hope, and that in such a situation, he would accept anything. The ruler said she could ask for any reward. She could refuse, but in that case, he did not guarantee the girl's safety. Because now, she knows the emperor's own secret. It seems the curse of Frodberg is still working. The man suggested. Emma asked if the 500-year-old emperor was talking about the same curse. He replied that his son was weak in both soul and body since birth, and on the day of his majority, the ruler's son fell into an eternal sleep. The emperor heard rumors that Emma had cured an earl's insomnia. If you can cure someone who cannot sleep, maybe you can handle the opposite situation. The man asked Emma, but Emma said that insomnia and a curse cannot be compared. And if His Highness was really struck by that curse, then how could an ordinary and common resident of Frodberg help? The emperor said that this was exactly what was needed, and that it could work. He asked Emma if she finally agreed. Or not. Mason looked at his lover with a pleading look, and she understood from his look what he was thinking. Things are not done that way. The girl began to reason that if she said no, she would lose her head. And if yes, she would lose sleep. But in the second option, at least she would live longer. The man offered to give her the title. This is an extremely rare opportunity for a master. Mason said that His Majesty is truly desperate if he is willing to give the title to the island's master. Emma started saying that Mason was right, that she didn't need a title, that she wouldn't even demand equal rights for the inhabitants of Fruitberg and the indigenous inhabitants of the empire. She only asked for freedom. In the empire, artisans were not even considered livestock. Fruitberg natives had to endure mockery and insults just for being foreigners. In the worst case, they could simply be killed. The girl said she just wants masters to have the opportunity to freely leave the empire. The ruler reacted ambiguously to this, saying it was audacity. At that moment, Emma was already saying goodbye to her head. But then the man said that if she wakes up the only heir to the empire, then why not? He added that he would reward them with money for success and would give the masters freedom to leave the empire. Emma decided to find out exactly how much money he would give her. The emperor named an amount of 10 billion beaches. The girl was in complete shock because of this. The man also added that Mason could receive lessons from the Gryden squad knights. After these words, the boy almost fainted from happiness. But then the girl decided to add that she had one more request. The man immediately asked what it was. To wake up the crown prince, I need to know something about his surroundings or his childhood. Since you are still his father, perhaps you can share the information. The girl asked. The emperor exclaimed that he had nothing special to tell. All information about his son was already written in the document he handed her. He then added that, after reading the paper, she would have to burn it. The heroine told the emperor that she needed more details, and not naked data about him, what he liked and what he didn't like. It would be better if she knew everything down to the smallest detail. Emma asked the ruler if he knew what his son loved most. For example, what kind of weather he preferred. This would help create the right atmosphere in the dream. But the man said that he didn't know this. And how was he supposed to know all this nonsense? He asked. The ruler thought and told Emma that his son's nanny might help with something. This news made the heroine smile. But the nanny was the wife of Marquis Ambrose, which is why she was executed recently. This young woman talked too much. There was no other option. The girl asked the man about his highness's friends, hoping he had at least one friend. After a short pause, the emperor said that his son had no friends. The girl was very upset because she really wanted to help. Upon waking up in the morning, she yawned. She looked in the mirror, changed clothes, and walked out into the hall from her bedroom. Emma asked Mason what it looked like, to which he chuckled. He asked her if this was what she was going to the palace in, to which she received an affirmative answer. The boy told the heroine that she looked bad. She replied by saying it wasn't an official meeting yet. Emma first wanted to wear a new dress and style her hair, but her usual clothes were more comfortable. Mason said something needed to be done about this shock and volunteered to help the lady. The boy said she needed to put on a new dress. He sprinkled her hair with aromatic oil and added a wide skirt for her. Emma was delighted. She told the boy he was right, since this might be the last time. Someone knocked on the door, and the girl went to open it and asked who was there. Without waiting for an answer, she opened the door and saw a man in a robe there. He told her she had to leave. The man said that His Majesty had given enough time to sort out all matters before the trip. Then the man in the robe left, and the girl followed him. On the way, Emma remembered that it would be nice to say goodbye to Joe. Joe, like Emma, is from Frodbager and was a childhood friend and a member of the family. But unlike the gentle heroine and quiet, Joe was a guy with character. Easily lost his temper at the mere sight of an arrogant imperial bragging about his origins. There are rumors that the people of Fort Beggar are gathering an army of like-minded people, a kind of revolutionary movement for freedom. And it is rumored that Joe is their leader. Emma said. The girl asked the man in the robe if he had any food preferences, since nothing unites people like a shared meal. According to Emma's mother, Emma was waiting for a signal from the man, because she knows where there are excellent places to satisfy her hunger. But the man refused. And in vain, said the girl. I, for example, want to eat as many things as last time. The heroine asked if the man had seen a pastry shop in front of her apartment, where they sell very tasty cakes, especially the Black Forest cherry cake, which is simply delicious. She talked again about food that you can only taste here. She offered to eat a very tasty chicken. It is so tasty that you will simply lick your fingers. Meanwhile, they approached a sign where the aunt's shop name hung. Emma's aunt greeted the girl just as Emma greeted her aunt. The man in the robe thought about how much the girl had eaten. A bag of fish-shaped buns. But where did she want more chicken? He thought she had a bottomless stomach. The aunt offered to order a new item. Chicken in pink sauce, but the man didn't care at all. Suddenly, the knight removes the hood from his robe. And Emma sees his face looking at him. She asks him if the knights are chosen by their appearance. But the man asked not to insult the imperial knights. To which the girl apologized in response. As soon as the chicken was brought, Emma's eyes sparkled, and her mouth started opening by itself. She only managed to utter one sentence, saying that the chicken looked very appetizing, and immediately flew towards it. While eating chicken, the girl asked the knight if he knew anything about the prince, to which she received a negative answer, because the knight personally reports to His Majesty. Emma was very upset because she needed at least some information about the prince. Prince Mike was Grand's ideal heir. He had exceptional knowledge and appearance, which was especially valued in the empire. His Highness has absorbed only the best and noble traits from his father and from his now-deceased mother. If someone finds out that this man, on whom the future of the empire depends, has fallen into a deep sleep, then the upheaval from 500 years ago will return. Therefore, the prince's condition is kept silent. Emma was also hired unofficially, so she and Maisonette can sneak into the palace as is. Therefore, Emma came up with a brilliant idea in which Emma and Mason would infiltrate the house disguised as servants. But the knight immediately interrupted this thought, since they would have to learn this for a long time. And there was very little time. The heroine didn't know how to carry out her plan. And then the knight remembered the secret passage. The knight and Emma meet Mason. Then the knight asks the boys if they are ready. But the girl stopped him and told him to wait. She wanted to visit one place one last time. Suddenly, the children arrive at a place where they didn't even think they would be. They were standing in a cemetery. The knight had many questions, but the main question was why they came here. Emma said that her mother's grave was here. Emma said that Autumn wanted to ask her mother for advice. If she were alive, she would know much more about her gift. The knight expressed his conclusion that she was still the only dream master in the whole empire. Emma replied that this is so. Now everything depends only on her. The pressure is colossal. The knight supported the girl. He told her to strengthen herself, since the fate of His Highness would depend on her work, and that of the empire. And if the heir regained consciousness, then the lives of the masters would change for the better. The heroine agreed with the knight, since only she has the power to change the future of many lives. The girl went to her mother's grave and said that what she expected was not that her mother would forgive her for such a bold decision. Then the children got into a very beautiful carriage and traveled through the forest. After a while they arrived. The knight opened the door and told the children to get out. The girl started asking where the secret entrance was, because she couldn't see anything. Immediately, a magical castle appears in front of the knight, after which the man opens it and tells the children that when they pass, they must stay close, since they might get lost here. In a moment, the knight stopped. He opened the door and called Emma, but she didn't want to go there alone, because it was dark and scary there. At that moment, the girl looked first at Mason, and then at the knight. In response, the man asked Emma if she had forgotten her plan, to which the knight received a negative answer. He told the dream master to enter through the door where there would be a room below, where he would soon bring His Highness. When the knight closed the door, the girl reminded him that she had forgotten the most important thing. She forgot dinner. The girl started knocking on the door and told him that if they didn't feed her, she would cry. She didn't want to walk alone in so much darkness, but in the end, she had to do it. The artisan noticed that there were completely different doors here. They were very large and indescribably beautiful. As soon as she opened the door, she saw incredible beauty. She thought she would end up in some damp dungeon. But here it was as if she had been given a palace room. Beautiful, although there was nothing surprising here. Then Emma sat down at the table and thought about Mason and what would happen to him. Her plan was that, with the help of an artifact called polymorph, we would turn Mason into a fake prince so that the prince's disappearance would not be noticed. And while Mason was busy distracting attention, we would move the prince there and treat him. But one question haunted the girl. If Mason could manage, because he wasn't a very good actor. Emma thought the night had returned. And she was happy because she wanted to eat. The night really came in. He had a prince in his arms. And the girl opened her mouth in surprise. The heroine asked what was fine in his arms. And didn't finish what she wanted because the knight looked at her strangely and asked her if something was wrong. To which the girl replied that everything was fine. None of that. The dream master sits on the bed next to the prince and looks at him fascinated. Emma thought about how fabulously handsome he was and couldn't even believe it. But suddenly the girl exclaimed, "Where was her dinner and how were things going?" To which the knight replies that his highness must be treated first. And then there will be food. Emma asked him not to hurry and not to pressure her because it was already very difficult for her. She didn't believe she could cope quickly. Then the knight said that she needed to start as quickly as possible. Emma agreed with this opinion. "Without a doubt," said the girl. But then the knight takes out the cake the girl was talking about. It was a Black Forest cherry cake. The artisan looked at the cake and agreed, but if he wakes up earlier from hunger, they should blame themselves. The knight said they needed to talk less and get down to work. The girl chuckled. She lay down on the bed, took the prince's hand, and fell asleep. She enters the subconscious of the crown prince and wants to see what he has there. The heroine saw this place almost immediately, although she thought it would take longer. Since when a spell is cast on a person, it is difficult to find their consciousness. But His Highness's mind shines, as if begging to be noticed. Everything was black and white in his mind. His Highness suffers from acromancy, Emma thought. And at some point, the girl realized that she could not move. She looked at herself and realized that she had not turned into a person, but a snake. She was in complete shock. Usually, this turns into what the owner of the consciousness supports the most. But nothing is clear here. The girl says, "It turns out that the prince is a lover of snakes." The heroine thought. Suddenly strange music started playing. The artisan was perplexed. First a snake, now this creepy song. This is really our prince. The girl thought. Suddenly, an unpleasant smell appeared from somewhere. Like iron. The heroine crawled to the pit to see what was there, where she saw human skulls. There were many of them. The girl was very scared and very quickly began to crawl away from that place. It was like an underwater cemetery. Emma thought that she needed to recover and act like a professional. These were just pebbles in the water. Cute ordinary pebbles. Emma suddenly saw a huge dragon and started to panic. The girl didn't know what to do. Run. That is, crawl away from here. On the horizon, she saw the prince, who knocked out this colossus with one blow and laughed sarcastically. The artisan thought he was crazy. She was very scared. The prince clicked and said only one word. It was the word father. The heroine thought he meant the emperor. But the prince looked at Emma in snake form. The girl thought he had noticed her. And she was right. The air said that the snake was not from his paradise, and that she needed to get away from here. Emma was pulled out of her dream and woke up holding the prince's hand. She thought about what had happened and concluded that the prince tried to kill her while she slept. After sleeping, the girl immediately started eating. The knight asked the girl how she was, to which she replied that the sponge cake had an amazing texture and excellent impregnation. But the knight said he wasn't asking about the cake, but about the state of His Highness and how he was. To which the girl briefly replied that outwardly everything was fine with him, But this man's inner world is quite creepy and strange. The girl asked the knight if the prince had been stressed lately, to which Emma replied with a question about what stress is. The girl asked the man if no one had told him he was a cracker, to which he replied affirmatively. The girl exhaled and said, "Then let's go." The knight said that, if something had happened to the prince, they would have reported it. Then he asked if Emma would try to penetrate His Majesty's dream again. The girl asked how it would continue. If they squeezed her like a lemon, it would be better for her to rest and gather new strength tomorrow. A healer from the palace will arrive tomorrow. He will help you recover. So you must get to work, said the knight. The man offered to eat something more if she wanted. Emma asked if it was possible to do something, to which she received a positive answer. At that moment, Emma's eyes lit up, and she began to list a huge variety of names of all kinds of desserts. The knight was shocked by the quantity of desserts and told the girl it would be better if she wrote down all the names. Emma re-entered the prince's subconscious, but here everything was still white, black and gray. The heroine looked at herself and noticed that she had turned into a snake again. While the dream master was thinking about her appearance, she realized that the place where she was crawling was the imperial palace. Suddenly she saw a door and a small gap in it. Without thinking twice, she decided to crawl towards the hallway. The prince was in that hall. He immediately drew attention to her and asked her what she needed here. He didn't remember creating her in his paradise. He asked where she was from. In her thoughts, the girl could not understand what kind of paradise the air was constantly talking about. She didn't understand that it was just a dream. The prince had nothing against snakes. On the contrary, he offered her his hand to crawl upon. She thought the snake might answer the question. She just wanted to ask something. At one point, a maid enters and brings fruit to His Highness. But for some reason, she is missing her head. The prince asked her if she should eat an apple or not, but the heroine decided to use the source since she didn't understand anything. A source is a person or thing. What can provide me with new information while I sleep? Usually these sources, as clues, are hidden in various corners of the dream. They are like breadcrumbs. They lead you to the depths of the sleeper's inner world. But Emma has a question about why His Highness asks the snake to answer the question. Since snakes cannot speak, she tried to tell the prince if he knew what would happen to him if he bit the apple. When the girl managed to say this phrase, she realized she could still speak, which left her in complete shock. But the prince himself was surprised to hear Emma's voice. That is the snake. The air laughed a lot, he couldn't stop. It seemed very funny to him. He was very surprised that the snake could speak. After all, in his paradise, no one could do this. The boy had the idea that she was not really a snake. Here Emma became very thoughtful. Since you cannot tell the sleeping person that everything happening is a dream, and that she is not a creature from there. Otherwise, the entities living in the sleeping world will immediately return him to reality. But the prince already knows that none of this is real. Emma thought that there were not so many entities around, and sooner or later, they will realize that she is a stranger. That's why she decided to take the risk. The snake confirmed that she was not from the prince's paradise, and that she was indeed not a snake. The heir asked who the snake really was, and how she got here. Amy introduced herself and said she was a dream master. The prince asked her if she could really enter other people's dreams, and if so, then she was unusual. And he also asked if the prince's father had hired her. The heroine confirmed her abilities, and said she was here to wake him from the eternal. And she didn't have time to finish speaking when the prince interrupted her. His Majesty warned Emma that they wanted to kill her. The snake girl asked how the boy realized this, to which the boy said it was a reaction, because she has no head. But she has excellent hearing. The girl told the prince that she thought, since he knew so much, everything could go well. But the entities still wanted to finish her off. Apparently, a ban is a ban. The prince recommends not using this word. Otherwise, his ill intent is no joke, said the boy, who needs answers to his questions so there's no need to rush to die. He asked Emma how long she had been asleep, fearing she had lost track of time while wandering. To which the snake replied that she had been sleeping for about 2 weeks, as if she herself didn't know. He replied that this was a lot. He asked what she had to do to return. To follow her. Emma begins to tell him what needs to be done. But then she sees the maid eavesdropping again. And she falls silent. The snake looked at her, but she had already started leaving. But there is an option, Emma continued saying. That everything can change if we eat the source, which will allow us to delve into the deepest layers of the subconscious. At that moment, the artisan was looking at the fruit plate. The heir asked if by origin he meant the fruits the maiden brought. The depths of the subconscious. The boy repeats, that's why I didn't want to try them. Emma asked the prince if he knew what it was, to which the boy answers negatively. Something told him he had to eat them. And it was the right feeling. Otherwise, nothing will change. And she will stay here longer. The boy said that, if the artisan really wanted him to eat it, she should tempt him. Emma's brain was assaulted. Because how could she surprise the prince? Even if only with the hypnotic dance of a snake. The prince said that in all myth snakes are the temptresses. So he expected something eloquent from Emma. The girl understood what the boy was talking about. And began. Emma asked for the companion. She promised to be there to help him overcome this. Without understanding it, she looked at the small snake and asked him again. Emma asked what the prince was afraid of the past that cannot be changed, of the present or the unknown future. It is necessary to leave the past behind. The girl will help the prince overcome it by staying close. The boy asked how he could trust the girl. She replied that she, like other people, had fallen for the tempter's speech. The girl also said that if the prince wants to share his experiences, he can safely tell them, and she will be able to listen to him. In addition, she promised to take all his secrets to the grave. The heir admitted that he didn't trust the snake much, but at least he won't be so bored. At one point, someone wakes the girl up. She wakes up and sees an unknown man in front of her, with a smile on his face. He asked the girl if she slept well. The girl jumped out of bed without understanding and asked who else he was. The man introduced himself as Alex. He was a healer. The girl was looking out the window and suddenly felt the healer's hands on her shoulders. He began to massage her shoulders. The knight said that things need to be done and not chat, get to work. Emma said she understood why His Majesty decided to fall asleep. The prince fled from everyone to his personal paradise. The man asked what kind of paradise the heir had fled to. The girl put forward the version that he was going through adolescence, to which the healer said that this could be an adolescent rebellion. His Highness has fled to the depths of sleep, and he doesn't know how to get out. The knight understood everything and told Emma to get him out, because she already knew the reason. The heroine was furious. She said she was falling. Not only is she physically ill, but she is also mentally tired from being underground for so long. At least let her breathe some air. Emma said. The man said not to waste time, that we had to get to work, because Emma had already slept through noon. Sometimes a knight seems much more terrible than an emperor. Then the girl remembered Mason. If everything was fine with him. The knight replied that everything was fine with him, but that he was just going crazy from constantly being in one place. The healer wished Emma luck, to which the girl simply replied with a cold aha. The heroine said don't be bored, that if something happens, you can finish the gingerbread cookies. Who needs it? The man asked Emma. If you say that, all the cookies will escape right off your plate, and they will remember their names. The knight ordered to get to work quickly. The girl realized that if she didn't start now, he would cut off her head. The girl fell asleep, but for some unknown reason, she didn't feel her consciousness. The girl came out of her state of sleep and asked to increase the area of contact with the prince. The knight didn't quite understand what the girl wanted to do. Emma said that the palm is no longer enough. She will try to hug him. The man looked at Emma strangely. She realized this and immediately warned him that she was not a pervert. It was just an ordinary hug. The knight was not sure if he could allow such things to be done. The heroine replied that now she is like a doctor for the prince. She helps him wake up. She said the case was serious, and that she would have to use all the most powerful techniques that could be used. The knight, after listening to the girl, still allowed her to do it. Emma lay down on the bed, looked at the prince, and was surprised how handsome he was up close. But she quickly came to her senses because the knight rushed her again. The girl said she was in the process. She closed her eyes and quickly fell asleep, falling once again into a white world. And black. This time it turned out to be a bird that cannot fly. So she fell into the prince's arms. The heir asked her why she appears in a new form every time. She said she had nothing to do with it, because her appearance depended on the prince's preferences. He kept looking at her and said she was cute, and asked if he could bite you. The girl wondered how His Highness determines who she is if she changes her appearance. To which the prince replied with a smile that only she had a head. And Emma herself said that she would be by his side. So she appears right in front of the prince, and he recognizes her. The heir said that after her appearance, he became warmer. A certain feeling of softness. Emma thought she could feel it hugging him in real life. The prince looked at the chick for a long time and asked her again if she would let herself be bitten. Emma tried to fly away, but only managed to jump. She asked where they were this time. If in the garden. The guy said they were in the Frisia Palace. But the bird didn't see them and asked where they were. The heir said that his mother took care of the garden while she was alive. And now it looks exactly like that. The boy said sadly. Emma asked him why he didn't imagine a garden from that time, with flowers in every corner, aromas, and everything. But the prince replied with a very sad face that he couldn't. Emma asked if this had anything to do with the fact that he was no longer in heaven. The prince thought about it and said not entirely. That he doesn't remember everything well. There is complete chaos in his head. In paradise, everything went well for him. But here, he barely controls the area. Emma said she knew that this time they were in a deeper layer of his subconscious. Therefore, when Emma tried to contact the boy through his palm, she didn't succeed. The more the boy loses control, the harder it will be for the heroine to invade his dreams. The girl told the prince that to return to reality, he needed to look for sources. He will be consciously attracted to them. Has something like this ever happened to you? Emma asked, to which she received the answer that he does not know. The prince was thinking about how one could understand that this was everything. The artisan offered him options in the form of places, or things that were significant to him. Some actions, beliefs, desires, love, or faith. In a word, absolutely everything. She asked the heir not to worry because he was in good hands. She was a master. She also said that all of the above was somehow related to secret desires from the past. The girl said there was nothing accidental in the dream, and promised to help solve it. The prince asked if he could then wake up. But the word wake up was taboo number 2, and it could not be pronounced. The heroine thought she would simply die. To which the prince laughed, and he was moved by how angry she was. But the girl was furious. She thought the prince was making fun of her. The boy doesn't think that if he says these words, the artisan will get something in return. For now, the words that just came out of the boy made the bird uncomfortable. If the prince said this word in his paradise, the headless ones appeared and gave him what he wanted. As an example, the prince listed various delicacies and board games as if they didn't want him to leave. But now no one appears after he ate that source apple. The boy thought that if he followed the artisan, then nothing good awaited him. To which the girl begged him not to think or say that. The prince said these were just his fears, and he hoped they were unfounded. Emma was sure there was at least some reason why they ended up in the flower garden. The heroine suggested looking for flowers because they might become a source for the prince. The girl also suggested trying to create a Frisia palace. The boy said he wasn't sure if this could help somehow, but that he still had to try everything. Said the girl. The prince tried to create this very freesia, but nothing came out, or rather, it turned out to be some kind of trash. The bird suggested trying to create other flowers. Not freesias. The prince said he remembered the flower of his horoscope. The heroine immediately said to try creating it in the garden, to which the prince replied that it was a bad idea. The boy tried hard and managed to create flowers called thanatos, or death flowers. At that moment, the girl suddenly wakes up and realizes what pushed her. The heroine only thought about how much her whole body hurt. She thought that damned prince felt unwell even after simple sessions. And more here, and she also thought she could escape at night. While Emma lay in bed, the healer was massaging her back. When he finished, she remembered that they hadn't actually met. So the girl introduced herself. The boy asked again, and said that this was interpreted as sweet dreams. A talking man, said the healer. And he laughed. Emma also laughed, telling him that everything was true. The girl thanked the boy for his help. She felt very bad upon waking up, but now she feels better. The man said, well, what can I say? He just has golden hands. She even felt somewhat awkward. Emma thought, why is he calling you? He usually knows the heroine's age. But then he replies that he thinks she is about 20 years old. Maybe 23. At this point, Emma was surprised. She thought he was a telepath. He laughed and said he was not a telepath. Everything was written on her face. The man said she could call him brother, and blew her a kiss, to which the girl replied that she would refrain. In her thoughts, she was saying that he was tiring her out, like an energy vampire. The doctor stood behind him and said, Imachka, oh Imachka. She got so scared that she called the knight. The knight heard cries for help and entered the hall. Asking what was wrong, the girl replied that she thought the healer had gone mad. The healer started saying that he was only giving a massage and also trying to make friends, but Emma shouted that this was a blatant lie. The girl said he whispered in her ear and read her thoughts. Everything was suspicious. He was not a doctor. He replied that it's okay, that the brother was just joking. To which she began to exclaim, what brother is he to her? She is the only daughter of the family. The knight began to explain to Alex that Emma is now very important to the entire empire. So don't bother her and treat her with due respect. Now who is fit for the role of brother is Knight Christian. He has an excellent physique, the dream of any lady. The doctor took Christian by the chest and told him that his chest was just a fairy tale. In his opinion, Christian was shocked by what was happening. He was very angry. Emma asked how this man became His Highness's personal doctor. And does the emperor really tolerate this? The knight said that he did not behave like this in the palace, that he was calm and diligent. But the girl found it hard to believe all this. What was it that made him change so dramatically then? Emma said. Then Alex shouted abruptly. And suddenly, what to fear? We must take everything from life. We will all die anyway. Emma thought that maybe he was also desperate. Like her. Then the girl heard footsteps. She turned and saw Mason. Mason saw Emma and smiled with joy. He was very happy to see her. They ran to hug, they were very happy to see each other. Mason lifted the heroine onto him. But suddenly, he remembered that he seemed to have made a mistake. Here Christian intervened and confirmed the information, saying that he should be grateful for being alive, that he was given the opportunity to fix everything. Emma asked the knight what his son was doing, but Christian told her to ask Mason himself. His job was done and he left. The artisan asked what the guy had done. His task was to lie there. How could he be mistaken in such a matter? Mason said that his acting skills leave much to be desired, but he definitely knows how to lie down. And so it was. First, a servant entered his room, apologizing for disturbing him. Then he said that Lady Anderson wanted to see him. The crown prince was quite calm. Like smoldering ashes, his subjects unanimously praised the young man, predicting many years of reign for him. But most officials were not so optimistic. His Highness adheres to the strategy of making concessions in the name of compromise. He surrenders quite quickly and easily, and is usually the first to extend a hand with a smile. Some take him for a tiger hiding its claws, while others consider him a jewel that does not shine. I fear that our weak-hearted heir will become a pawn in the hands of his own subordinates when he ascends the throne. The man said. He also thinks that he simply needs a companion who will not allow him to deviate from the right path. That is what he said, the boy asked the girl, whose name was Isabella. Voices were heard somewhere in the castle. Madam, wait, shouted the servant. His Highness still needs peace, said the same servant. But the girl heard no one. Isabella opened the door to the prince's room and entered there. Here Mason, that is the prince, was surprised by the events and looked at the girl with an inquisitive look. The girl, as soon as she entered, ran. Immediately began to hug him. Your Highness, exclaimed the girl. Then Mason remembered what the knight said. In such situations, one must pretend to be sick and not talk to anyone. And that's it, asked Mason. To which Christian replied yes. And that tomorrow afternoon, an acting coach will arrive. Mason's task is simply to hold on. Here the false prince replied that he understood, while the prince remembered what Christian told him. The girl was still hugging him, and he didn't know what to do with her next. Isabella found out that His Highness was not feeling well, and immediately decided to come. She hoped the girl wouldn't offend him. The prince replied that he was even glad to meet my lady. The girl said she knew he was angry with her. Why does he speak so dryly? Is it really so hard for him to call her like before? Mason didn't know what the prince might call her. Maybe honey or darling. Isabella, like Mason, was surprised, since it seemed to her that the prince was very cold towards her. She suggested that sadness had hit the boy so hard that it prevented him from thinking calmly. The girl apologized for her haste. She was confused by his face. He didn't look sickly at all. Then the girl takes the prince by the sleeve, and he throws his hand aside. Your Highness, you are not yourself, Isabella said. She suggested that today was not the best day for her visit, and apologized again. In the end, she said she would pray for his health. But at the last moment, the prince shouted at her to stop. But only after doing it did she think she had done it. The girl turned to the boy, but a stranger immediately closed the door. What are you doing? The knight asked Mason. Just a little more, and he would have given himself away. He would have been skinned if his engagement to Lady Anderson dissolved. But the same man who closed the door bursts into the conversation, saying that they will not allow it. This guy's name is Joe. He got there on His Majesty's order. Joe will be Mason's acting mentor. And he asked the knight to rant about false princes, because there are almost all of them in the palace. He also said that this engagement would not be broken just like that, but that he would talk to Lady Anderson. Mason was very grateful to Joe. He really wanted to thank him somehow. But then Joe grabbed the prince by the waist and asked him, maybe in the same way. The prince was completely in shock from what happened. That's how it all happened, Mason told Emma. Oh, how, the girl replied. But Emma realized that she wasn't the only one putting on some kind of eccentric act. The most important thing is that Mason was safe. And Emma needed to get back to work. Prince Mason said he would be there. The fake prince really liked the chairs in the prince's room. It would be a pleasure to work sitting in them. Mason saw Emma getting onto the bed and asked her what she was doing. The girl said she was getting to work. But Mason wondered why she was getting into bed with the prince. When the artisan lay down on the bed, she explained to the boy that there was no other way, that it was very difficult to capture His Highness's consciousness. But then the doctor intervenes, taking him away with the words, "Let's get to work, you shouldn't sleep so much. Don't bother the adults, darling. Better play with your brother." But Mason didn't even know about the doctor and what he was doing here. The boy asked what he was interfering with. But then Emma turned with a threatening look so they would calm down. After which the dream master has a dream with the real prince. As soon as the fox fell into the dream, everything was already colored. There were many flowers in the garden. At least there was progress. While she was standing thinking about the changes, someone picked her up and she shouted in surprise. Of course it was the prince. He was waiting for her, calling her the new appearance with which she arrived in the dream. A fox. Emma thought that the prince himself had kicked her out of the dream then. Suddenly, the fox jumped out of the prince's arms and walked alone. The prince asked to hug her, but the fox refused. She thought he would kick her out again, and that she would have to experience these unpleasant feelings again. Then the prince asked her what she felt, to which the fox replied that she felt unbearable pain. Then the prince wanted to hug her even more and started moving closer to the fox. But she insisted again that she didn't want to, and that if the prince got closer, she would flee. About that situation, she explained that she didn't want to scare her away. It happened by accident. Then the prince remembered the dialogue with the bird, where they talked about his cherished desire. What he really wants. What does he want? The prince thought upon this phrase. He took the bird in his hands and asked her if she was afraid to say this after everything she had seen here. He began to squeeze the bird in his fist, while she said that she couldn't get out of here only with the help of rage. The flame of anger shines somewhere, but it also goes out quickly, leaving behind only ashes and emptiness. However, even under those ashes, sprouts can sprout that remain dormant in the form of buds. The bird replied that they will need support to grow well, and that the people around you can become that support. The prince replied that for the moment, there is no one in whom he should seek this support here. But suddenly the bird exclaimed, "What about her?" And after that, Emma was thrown out. She was with her soul. But he wasn't. He remembered the fox with tears. The dream mistress told the prince that it was strange, because then he felt a strong desire to scare her away. The prince tried to justify his action, but he couldn't. He was upset. It seems he was ashamed. The fox asked him why, and then pretended to be happy to see Emma. The prince said he wasn't pretending, that he simply liked animals, that he didn't need anything from them, that they listened silently and said nothing. Emma concluded that he talks a lot. The girl told the boy that this was not the case, that he needed new connections, because he was afraid the fox would die. To which the prince replied that everything was true. He assumed that he was afraid of losing what was valuable to him. The prince was shocked because the fox said everything she thought, and it turned out to be true. In her thoughts, Emma said that she understood with just one look at those headless creatures, and also added his father's insult. So she managed to solve this puzzle. Emma decided to ask him what would happen if she no longer came to him. The prince imagined such a situation, and immediately tears began to spring from his eyes. He replied that he would then remain imprisoned in this place forever. But the fox said that was not the issue. The prince knelt down and begged the fox not to leave. "What haven't I done for what was dear to me?" His Majesty said. The little prince begged his father to forgive someone. He begged, pleaded, threw tantrums. But he finally received a carefully packaged box with a severed head. No matter how much the prince tormented himself, only one solution occurred to him. He needed to kill his father. Take the throne from him just to end this nightmare. "Wait," said the fox. "You yourself understand that this is not a solution." The prince continued before finally closing himself off, and continue with self-destruction. But the fox offered him another option. Wouldn't it be easier to fight for everything he loves, without regretting risking his life? But the prince replied that she was again demanding something difficult from him. Suddenly, he kisses the fox and, surprised, she was simply stunned and petrified by shock. At that moment, the boy takes the fox in his arms and tells her she was caught, while the prince was carrying her. In some random way, the girl felt like she had turned into a person. The fox only noticed that all the colors had completely returned. The boy said that the fox is so charming that his heart is already beating. "What's wrong with you?" the vixen asked the prince, pushing him with her paw. But the boy still held firm and asked her if she would stay with him. The fox replied that under no circumstances, because she needs to get out of here. And then she will have at least 10. At least 100 foxes. She asked why he needed so many. One was enough for him. The prince asked her if he could take this as an agreement to get closer to the dream owner. To which she replied maybe. Emma asked the boy if he would answer the same if the girl was in a different form. To which he thinks that she is cute in any form. The boy asked how about a bunny next time. But in reality, she is a person. The prince said that, if someone liked her, she would not change her appearance. The boy wanted to hug her, but she raised a barrier with her paws and jumped out of the prince's arms. She asked how he was going to get close if she was constantly running away. The fox said that he left her no other choice. Emma asked the boy if he realized that she was the same person as him. The prince thought about it and said he didn't particularly feel it. And Emma decided to remind the prince that she was also a girl. To which the boy said that he understood her. The prince decided to call the fox. And when she approached, he scratched her muzzle. The boy said that he felt like he was healing. "It turns out it's useful," the fox replied. The prince agreed with this, but only when the girl is silent. The boy said that when the girl introduced herself, she didn't say her name. "So, what is your name?" he asked. "Oh," said the girl, "I didn't say my name is Emma." The prince said this name sounded familiar to him. He was sure the name had some special meaning. The girl was shocked by this answer, since she was the first person to notice this. After the capture of the island, the inhabitants of Frodberg were forbidden to speak their native language and spread it. By taking away the language, the imperialists gained total control over the colony because they took away what united the people. For 500 years, the language was almost forgotten. The only thing that has survived to this day are our names. Most of the empire's inhabitants knew nothing about that language, and they weren't very interested. When the crown prince mentioned the hidden meaning behind Emma's name, she felt strange. After repeating the hidden meaning of Emma's name, she said it suited her very well. The fox saw a big castle and told the prince to turn around and see what it was. He looked and asked Emma if this could be considered a source. "Did you create it?" asked the girl. But the prince said he didn't do anything. If the castle appeared by itself, then it met all the conditions. The prince asked what conditions. Love for foxes. Emma hopes that what they are looking for is not bestiality. She then invites the boy to take a closer look at the castle. She decided to enter the castle and saw many more headless people there than Emma saw in the prince's paradise. The vixen was very scared. She ran up to the prince, and at some point he asked her if she wanted him to hug her, to which Emma agreed. He said it was very nice when the fox was honest with him. The artisan thought that with a colored picture it wouldn't be so scary. But it seems she was wrong. They were in a very beautiful hall and spacious, and the fox had already calmed down. But then they saw a small boy. He looked a lot like a prince. And then the fox immediately understood what was happening here. Suddenly, they saw a man very similar to His Majesty and his son, and they realized where they had ended up. The prince asked if this was a source effect, to which the fox replied that maybe grains of the prince's memories were reflected here, which is why he and his father have heads here. What we see is a reproduction of images from the past when this happened. Emma asked, but the boy remembered nothing, since his memories are fragmentary and hazy. And if he tries to concentrate, everything floats in his head. And this too, asked the fox girl. But the boy said he would understand as soon as he looked. His Majesty tells his son that he told him he trusted his father. But the boy couldn't say anything to his dad. He averted his gaze sadly. The ruler said that if this is true, then the prince must prove it to him. "What are you doing?" the boys asked. But then the little prince falls down the stairs. Everyone watched this situation tensely. There was intrigue as to whether the father would catch his son. Or not, but the father simply walked away from the stairs and did nothing. This was the father's answer to the boy's trust. He wanted to show him that trusting anyone is considered stupidity. The boy cried in pain, but his father did not react in any way. The father told the prince to remember this pain and the price of trust. As he left, His Majesty told the boy not to show his weakness to anyone in the future. Then they saw that the boy's world simply fell apart. He was very upset. Here the fox only had time to look at the prince when they immediately woke him up from his sleep. Emma wondered why she wakes up at these moments. The colors had just returned. His Highness had barely started opening up to her. But then she hears a familiar voice. "Are you awake?" he asked. It was His Majesty. He wanted Emma to explain what was going on here. "This is not what you might think," said the girl, to which the emperor said that he remembered that they were allowed to use any method. But such a strong hug seems a little strange. But the artisan had no other way. "Usually, for work you need not just a palm," the ruler asked. The girl replied that His Majesty's consciousness was too hidden. The emperor said that the prince was a weakling. What was his problem? But Emma did not dare tell His Majesty that the problem was himself. The man suggested that the work was delayed due to indefinite deadlines. Emma started saying that only a couple of days had passed. But the ruler interrupted her and told her that he was giving her 2 weeks. After hearing what he heard, Emma was surprised and repeated the time again to make sure. The emperor said that this should be enough for such close contact. To which Emma tells him what will happen if she doesn't succeed in this time. To this question, the man replied calmly that execution awaited her, of course. From what she heard, horror was on everyone's faces. Emma replied that sooner or later she would face the end anyway. The man replied how she dared to doubt him. He gave her his word. "Trust me. Be kind," he added. But Emma could not resist and said, "Be kinder like you were kinder to His Highness when he trusted you." And he fell down the stairs. "Wasn't your lesson that you can't trust anyone?" she asked. His emperor looked at his son and told him that he would make a decision when he saw the results. The emperor finished his cigarette and put it out on the knight's hands. Seeing this, everyone was in complete shock. While Emma and Mason were there, they realized that the rumors about the Greedon Knight Squad being the emperor's personal dogs were true. How can you put out a cigar on a person's hands? Emma thought. Then the ruler said, while leaving the room, that the prince seemed to like snow. Maybe it will help him somehow. Emma wondered if she could even trust him about what he was saying. But then Mason and Emma remembered the night. They ran to him and asked if everything was fine with him, to which he replied that it was nonsense, and that he was fine. The artisan asked Christian if he was a masochist. The prince replied by saying that boys should know when to stop. But they didn't back down and asked to show the wound. But then Mason brings the girl a cherry pie. She asks him how he is, because he was delighted with the Greydon Knights. To which the boy replied that everything was fine, except for a perverted doctor. The doctor replied what he did, and Emma told him to disappear and take his hands off. At first, she thought about the fact that His Majesty had only granted 2 weeks to complete the work. Then she exclaimed that there was no time to rest. The knight also said, looking at the boys, that they had to get back to work. Then, Emma began to think about how she should quickly wake up the prince, or eat as many cakes in the palace as she could. At which point, she started writing them down, to then give the list to the knight. The girl also thought about how to prove His Majesty wrong, because he tortured his own son. She was thinking about what to tell His Highness. Who would have thought that he himself erased his memories to get rid of the pain? She cannot leave him. "Mason, get to work," ordered the girl. To which the boy asked if she wanted to take a break. But she said she couldn't. The artisan decided to heal the prince with a new portion of cute animals. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't enter his mind. She again did not feel his consciousness. It seemed that due to those traumatic memories, His consciousness became even deeper. She had no other choice. She looked at the boys and asked if she could unbutton the prince's shirt. Such a question left them stunned. Emma realized that most likely this was possible, since no one objected. So she unbuttoned not the shirt and looked at the prince. The girl thought she felt like some kind of pervert. Emma got this far, and this time she saw Snow as soon as she entered his mind. She noticed that the world had changed slightly. This time she turned into a dog. The heroine was confused by the fact that the prince was not there, but she was sure he was nearby somewhere, and went to look for him. Then she saw him and gave a signal with her voice. The boy turned around and saw the bitch. He was very happy to see her. She licked him and he laughed because she was tickling him. He said he expected to see a fox. And then a new furry miracle appears. Emma realized that unknowingly she was acting like a real dog. And then she asked the boy if he was upset that she was no longer a fox. He replied no, because now he was very warm. Immediately after the girl disappeared, the prince was transferred outside the palace. He began to freeze because winter suddenly arrived. And snow fell, and then he felt the warmth again that came when you appeared. The prince said. When the prince thought of warmth, Emma assumed the prince meant her hug in the real world. Emma asked the prince if he felt warmth on his back, to which the boy asked how she knew. The girl decided to tell him that she was hugging him. She said there was no other way, because his consciousness was very hidden. Well, what's wrong? The prince asked, because now he is also hugging her. The girl explained that now she has the form of an animal. And this is different. We are actually humans, and we are hugging in bed. Do you feel the difference? The heroine asked. But the boy doesn't quite understand what bothers him so much. The prince said that she is too cute. The boy said not to worry, because she is cute in any form. Then the artisan said that she would assume he lets himself be hugged. They entered the palace, and Emma asked the prince if he had any happy memories associated with snow. What do you mean? The boy asked. The dog said that this sudden winter has a reason. The boy remembered that all his memories were mixed up. The heroine asked if the boy remembered at least something. Any small thing would do. Emma is sure that His Majesty mentioned snow for some reason. The boy thought about it, but unfortunately, he remembered nothing. Then we have to look, said the girl. What to look for? The heir asked. But suddenly, the mistress of dreams smelled the scent and followed it. Where are you going? The prince asked, to which the girl replied that she had taken the trail of his lost memories. He was surprised that the bitch could navigate the palace. It was only his master's instincts that showed him the way. The prince asked why they had to go there. But the artisan assured the prince that he had to go there. The boy asked why, and Emma replied that they were deceiving her a little. The prince opened the door and saw the servants. It was the kitchen. The girl invited the prince to drink hot chocolate. She explained to the boy that if he drinks something hot and eats something sweet, then maybe he will eat something. Simply the atmosphere outside the window is conducive. Who do you take me for? I'm not 5 anymore, said the prince. And he snapped the dog's nose. Emma told him that she was actually 3 years younger than him. And he in turn was surprised. The boy asked the dog, Are you older than me, that is? The heroine replied, yes, 3 years. The boy couldn't believe that the girl was 3 years older than him. The bitch smelled something sweet on the table and decided to see what was there. But suddenly she smelled macarons. The prince said he remembered special pink macarons. They are of a soft pink shade, and they also look and smell like real roses. They are not so easy to get. But if my puppy wants it, then why not? The boy said. The boy looked and got emotional about how she asked for this dessert. God, I can't stand you, he said. It seems the dog loves sweets, and probably led the boy to the kitchen to eat dessert. The prince promised the girl that he would order the servants to serve her macarons so she would stop sniffing. She asked if the entities obey him. The boy said that so far yes. At first, he thought they couldn't be controlled. But then he realized that they are very kind. And you don't make them angry like then. This is good, said the heroine. The boy warned her that if she was scared, he could hug her. Emma refused because she said the servants obey her. So everything is fine. Then the boy invited her to admire the snowfall and sit at the table. And he didn't have time to finish, because suddenly he felt pain. And when Emma asked him what was wrong, he told her to be quiet. His Highness called the boy several times, but he did not answer. Emma thought about what he was talking about. No one said anything here. The guy was trying to say something. He said he heard a voice calling him Mel. The artisan thought the guy had a technical problem, or that he remembered something. Then he muttered something like small children, and then added children and snow. Stranded, come to us. Someone called the guy, someone answered. Idiot, it's not stranded, but His Highness. How many times do I have to tell you? The voice said again. Fool, what highnesses can be in the company of friends. Emma asked the boy if this was his memory, or something like that. And where is the prince himself? A question arose from the dog as they watched the current situation, where one of the children said he didn't care about Mel. Or Highness, it's just me. Then the girl saw the little prince. She ran to her friends and asked what they wanted to show her. The artisan now found the prince even younger than he was then. The boys said they wanted to show the kitten. The boys said that maybe he had run out of mother. The girl told the boy that she had brought a kitten, and now he should take care of it, to which the boy replied that he also participated. The little prince asked the boys not to fight, and asked where the kitten was. It's not cold outside. Emma noticed that the prince was very cute. The girl concluded that the heir has liked animals since childhood. It turns out this is a happy memory. Emma said, and the boys told the little prince that the girl took the kitten to the stable. It was warmer there, and the boy asked if the horses would eat it. The boy agreed with Emma that maybe so. But at that moment, she thought maybe not. Prince Jr. said that the boys were stupid because horses are herbivores. Emma noticed that the little prince seemed happy. But then the girl remembered that His Majesty said the prince has no friends, but that these guys are not the same, even if they are not aristocrats. But she suggested that they are not with the heir now, which means this is the emperor's doing. His Highness called Emma the prince's dog. Wait for me. The heroine realized that, after all, being a dog has its disadvantages. If she were a person, she would at least take his hand. The prince asked if she needed to be carried, to which the artisan replied that she had said many times that she was a person, and not a stuffed animal. The prince explained that it was difficult for him to imagine Emma as a person. Emma told the boy that she was somewhat similar to that fox. The prince asked if she was the same redhead. The girl replied that she had red hair. The girl also said that her hair is long and curly and that her eyes are green. The prince said that it seemed to him that Emma was short. That is short. The heroine exclaimed that she was not a dwarf, and the prince replied that he never called her that. Don't laugh at me, I'm actually tall, said the girl. The boy asked if she was taller than him. The heroine thought that Mason was not enough for her. Now the prince was mocking her height. She replied that it was clear that she was shorter. At that moment, the prince put a daisy crown around his neck and asked even lower. It turned out the boy put a leash on the girl. It was a blow to her pride, it suits her. But Emma said it looks more like a funeral wreath. Emma asked why a crown, and he replied because his mother taught him to make crowns. The heroine said it sounded romantic, like another happy memory. But he said he didn't remember it. The girl called the boy to watch what was happening. The little prince showed his mother that it was snowing. He was still very small here. What about this memory? Emma asked. Did you say the empress taught him to knit? Maybe this will become a source. This is a valuable moment in life. But the prince said this was not such a valuable moment. Why isn't everything the same? Emma wondered. But then the prince called her to go somewhere, and the girl didn't understand why they were leaving. The prince also looked happy here, because not everything is the same. The space is no longer being destroyed, which means they can find more memories. And it is also possible that the headache outbreak was because several of them formed at once. Emma is sure there is a source among them. The prince assured the girl that these were just annoying fragments of memories. And the heroine suggested paying attention to these fragments. Emma told the boy that everything that happens in a dream is not an accident. But then, what is the point of all this? The boy asked, but the vixen didn't answer. Because she was shocked and constrained by fear. The boy said not to worry. Because the millet had changed place. There was probably nothing special here. Although there is a table with your macarons. The boy told the artisan. Suddenly, Emma and the prince saw the little prince again. He was sitting with a book in his hands. The girl looked at the young prince and concluded that he had been important since he was little. But maybe not. Compared to other upbringings, that bright boy seemed unhappier where he went. The prince suggested that these memories had no value. And he offered to leave, so categorically. Emma asked, "Don't you see anything important here?" The boy said he wouldn't forget what was important to him. Maybe all this mattered once. But if he no longer wants to remember it, why is it necessary? The prince asked. The girl asked herself the same question in her head. The heroine thought he was talking about the memories they found along the way. But suddenly, the little prince started coughing up blood. Emma asked what was happening here. If there was poison in the tea or something like that. She asked the heir what all this means. Why are you coughing up blood in the past? He replied that it was nothing special. He just drank poison and Emma understood. But why nothing special? It's terrible. The prince explained by saying that the effect of the poison is short-term. And there will be no consequences. It is common practice to take poison in small doses to develop resistance. He said so as not to dramatize the heroine. But it hurts you, said the dog. To which the boy replied that it is more difficult for a young body to adapt to poison. But the heir thought and said that it would be difficult for any organism. He agreed that this seems like madness to ordinary people. But it is the norm for a member of the imperial family. How can this be considered normal? Harassing a child from a young age is simply terrible. We are all people first of all. The prince is no exception. This is not normal. Emma asked if the prince still studied after taking poison, without any supervision. But the boy said that they usually drink poison before bed. Perhaps in this situation, the father found out that he hadn't taken the poison the day before. So he did it. Most likely, he added a penalty dose. Hearing this, Emma was surprised. She looked at the prince, and he was just happy that she was looking at him. He said not to worry about that. Everything remained in the past, the vision disappeared. And the prince offered to leave. The girl thought that he was speaking as if she hadn't looked at him before, but rather at a stranger. Obviously, the prince became indifferent to the repeated repetition of such abuse. Emma understands, seeing this, that what happened to the prince is not the worst outcome, since the matter could have ended in suicide. Then the girl saw a table with those same pink macarons. The prince asked if dogs could eat this, since otherwise he had heard that giving chocolate is harmful. She began to make excuses, saying she wasn't a real dog, but that she looked exactly the same. Emma looked at the prince with pleading eyes. She really wanted the cake. But he said not this time. She asked him what else she had to do. And he said he wanted her to lick his cheek. The dog jumped onto the boy and started licking him. You jumped, said the prince. You can be kind, otherwise you will make a hole. Emma said she couldn't help it, maybe it was her instinct. Okay, said the boy, take it, she deserves it. And he hugged her tightly. Then the boy decided to tell the girl his happy memories associated with snow. Emma was overjoyed since he still has happy memories. The prince said that now like this. And he kissed Emma on the nose. But then he looked sadly at the bitch. But she wasn't wearing a collar. He said the only word, which was the word source. You found it, said the heroine. Is it true, asked the prince. He said he was missing the collar. So that was the source. Yes, replied Emma. You said you found a happy memory. And current memories also count. It seems the girl underestimated the prince's love for animals. It turns out the colors returned thanks to the fox fur. Perhaps this world is the same as the previous one. That is, all are fragments of a single whole called memory. Destroying one, we move to the next past. More intimate. And the further we go, the darker it will be. Not only Emma, not even the prince will be safe there. Your Highness, be careful of the entities from the other world, said Emma, as they are close to the core of the prince's memory. Someone will try with all their might to prevent the boy from leaving this place. Your Highness, listen to me carefully. The girl advised. I'm afraid time is running out. My real body is very exhausted, so I won't be able to return soon. She says, as long as you are alone, hide from the entities. The Dream Master advised. The prince needed to avoid dangerous situations. His girlfriend warned him. But there is no way to kill, asked the prince. Otherwise, he doesn't like hiding like a rat. But Emma flatly rejected him. There is only one prince here. But there are many entities. Moreover, the world will not be stable. No one knows how this might end for him. To which he said that nothing would be worse than death. The girl explained to him that if he died in his sleep, he would be thrown into a place even deeper than the abyss. There was no way out. Eternal sleep paralysis, which would only bring him pain and suffering. Emma also said that if he gets there, he will never see cute animals again. And fluffy ones. The prince started telling Emma that he had never seen a harp seal. It would be a shame to die without looking at them. But the girl noticed that she started to disappear. Emma started talking quickly to the prince and begging him to listen to her words. But he kept saying that he hadn't seen giraffes or rhinoceroses. Emma ordered him not to engage in battles under any circumstances. When she disappeared, the boy wondered who she would be the next time they met. The girl returned completely exhausted to the real world. When she woke up, she immediately fell off the bed. And people rushed to her aid. Emma only had one thought about whether the prince could manage alone, even if he created that dimension himself. The doctor said that fatigue continues to accumulate in the girl's body. He also said that if this happens again, it will lead to the grave. But Emma decided to immediately return to the prince. It's too early to rejoice. Even if there has been progress, the emperor only gave 2 weeks, and only 10 days left. Emma managed to penetrate the consciousness, but she didn't see the prince, judging by the way the heroine quickly captured his mind. He was fine. Emma heard heavy footsteps. She was sure the prince wouldn't run towards her like that. But then she saw a creature with a knife and started running away from it. Emma saw a gap between the wall and the column and hid in it. There was no time to think about what the girl had turned into this time. But she was lucky to have such an agile body. Apparently, it's some kind of rodent. And one of those whose butt is bigger than a newspaper. Suddenly, someone started bothering her. She thought it was a servant, then shouted that she couldn't leave with anything. To defend herself somehow, she bit whoever took her. But it turned out to be the prince. She saw that it was the prince, and she was very surprised and glad to be alive. The prince said it was good that she didn't die because it was the first time he had seen a meerkat. Emma was very scared by the blood on the boy's face. In tears, she asked him to wipe the blood from her face. As the girl asked, the prince hadn't killed anyone before her arrival. But at that very moment, he killed the servant behind him. He said, smiling, that he was hiding. And he didn't kill anyone. Emma already knew that. She knew the prince had a dark side from the moment she met him. It's surprising that he held back for so long that Emma even managed to forget about it. What now? The heir asked, to which the heroine replied that he shouldn't stand still. That he has to leave. She said that to understand where they need to go. The boy needs to listen. He must be attracted to the source. The more hidden the place, the better. The most personal memories are stored there. That is, we are acting chaotically, said the prince, to which the girl replied that chaotic is what is happening to his dream. The prince deliberately held his sword against the wall to get rid of everyone at once. But Emma asked what to do if they crowded into a crowd. Emma warned that there could be a colossal amount of them here. It was too reckless. But then he took Emma in his fist and squeezed her. She began to say that this was not reckless at all. She didn't mean that. She begged the prince for mercy. She thought he had become softer. But she was very scared. The prince said he knows what he is doing. This is not recklessness, of course. The boy asked the heroine. This was unexpected for the girl. The prince said he was about to cry. Although, to be honest, I would like to see your tears. I'm sure it would be cute. But don't get angry, I will do it. Do what you say, said the boy. The heroine realized that she had managed to fool him with her face. He would definitely only be kind to animals. By the way, you have such a strange look that you look like a meerkat. The boy asked, since you are listening to me, is it possible to do something about the blood on your body? Emma asked. The prince replied that he had too many complaints today. The girl begins to worry about what she will do when she wakes up and finds him next to her in human form. She worries about her only life. The prince suggested where else personal memories could be. What? The girl asked, but he said she would understand when they arrived. The girl asked if that was the right place for them. They entered a very large hall with a beautiful chandelier on the ceiling. This is the emperor's office. There will definitely be at least some memories here, but it might do more harm than good. And then they saw the little prince. And they froze in silence. His father told him not to come to him empty-handed, that he had plenty of free time. He said that since yesterday he couldn't find the brother and the sister from the Horn family. To this, His Highness replied that he seriously came to find out from him where the servants were. He asked. The girl wondered which Horn family the boy was referring to. The girl immediately had many questions about the fact that the prince had his own servants. She realized that that boy and that girl were from the Horn family. The boy couldn't find them anywhere. So he thought he would tell him. But His Highness simply silenced the prince. It turns out both disappeared. The emperor really did something to them. Emma asked why they were here. The guy said they needed a shortcut to the underground passage. Then the prince touched the shelf with the books, and a secret door opened. The heroine couldn't even believe that the prince would manually lift the spell. It turns out he knows how to control mana. It's just miracles. Where did you hear from your father? The servant asked. I told you not to trust anyone. The father said. They are ordinary children. What is their fault? The little prince said. His Majesty said that being a child is not a crime. You are right about that, but ignorance is largely a crime. Seeing all this, the heroine was surprised. What kind of logic is this? The ruler said not to waste time. Go, but the father, shouted the boy. The artisan looked at everything bewildered. What the prince did not do to protect what he loved. The little prince shouted that if they were ignorant, it was only because they were small. How could it be his fault? Emma only had one question. Why did His Majesty put so much pressure on his son? All the time the girl spent with the prince. He treated her humanely, more like his younger past self. A good heart is at the core of his character. But madness has taken root in this heart. Then she remembered his words. When he said it was necessary to kill the emperor. Then this nightmare would end. And this happened thanks to the emperor. For humanity or madness to prevail in the prince. When they went downstairs, they heard someone's footsteps. And then they saw a headless man. The prince said it would be harder for the servants. To which the girl replied that this was already understandable. No wonder they say one of them is worth an entire army. This is the knight from that same Gryden detachment. He is very strong. As the prince feared for Emma flying away, he decided to hide her under his shirt. He said to have a little patience, and that she was quite comfortable. But if His Majesty saw her now, not a wet spot of her would remain. First, there was an escape from the maiden entity. And now this, why can't you turn her into a cheetah? The dream mistress asked the prince why he stopped. But he didn't have time to answer, since the battle with the Gryden Knight began. It's strange, the girl thought. Before, the prince simply ran with all his might. Emma began to feel sick from this trembling. But she was thinking about why His Majesty suddenly decided to fight the Gryden Knight. He is the heir to the empire. We have to believe in him a little more, the heroine thought. In the end, the battle did not end with the prince's death. And Emma, the girl, as soon as she came down, was very happy for the land. More than ever. What a touching face, said the prince, looking at the girl. Emma asked if the prince was injured, but he replied that he just had a dislocation. This happens when there is a large difference in weight class between opponents. The artisan asked him why all this started, if everything was going well for him. The boy asked Emma if she was worried about him, but she replied that, of course. If she gets hurt, she will just wake up. And if he does, then everything will be different. The man said that in heaven, all this was solved very simply. Emma said this was not an equation for him. But the prince was leading to the fact that his powers in this world were clearly fading, especially after a couple of earthquakes. In heaven, the prince could do whatever he wanted. The heroine noticed that a secret passage from the office leads to the place where he treats His Highness. The girl thought that the state of this place was maintained by magic, judging by the absence of changes. But then she remembered that Christian being had the exact same brooch. And this is an artifact for creating a passage to the tunnel. The prince fell to the floor, and the artisan asked him if every knight had that artifact. And that's why he entered into battle with him. The prince confirmed and said that it would be more difficult if he started casting magic there. Emma asked that the knight couldn't cast the spell because he had no head, to which the boy replied that it was true. The heroine told His Highness that he acted recklessly again. The prince said he knew, truly, that he had to check something. All knight brooches have the family coat of arms engraved on them. The prince remembered the only knight who was left-handed. His hand was still firm, uncle. Emma wondered which uncle he was talking about. If it was His Highness's uncle. At first, when they counted some information about the prince, there was only one page, but Emma had to read it carefully. Marcel is 19 years old, came of age this year. Learned to speak at 3 years old. Mastered writing at 3 years old. And from the age of 4, he became interested in the history of the empire. And studied administration, disciplines. Naked facts, nothing personal. Said Emma, at the age of 13, he was declared crown prince. At the age of 15, he got engaged to the daughter of the ducal family Anderson. According to the script, but it was written there that more than one nanny died, whom the emperor mentioned in passing. It was written there that among those who are in some way related to His Majesty, there is not a single survivor. Knight of Marcel Grant, before the latter officially became crown prince, who replaced his own father. It was his maternal uncle Ben. It seemed that for many years he became a strong support for the prince. But even he was beheaded for high treason, along with Empress Lolita herself. Curiously, that unfortunate day was also chosen as the day of the prince's initiation ceremony. The execution took place right in front of Marcel himself, by the decision of Emperor Cardino himself. The girl realized that that prince from the Gryden detachment was His Highness's uncle. She felt ashamed. What could she do? She thought. Emma asked the prince if the boy would throw away this brooch, to which he replied that he no longer needed it, that he had already figured out what he wanted. The prince asked where the next memory fragment was. He was already dizzy from the moments of the past associated with this place. And they also got mixed up, to which the girl replied that if it was something important, then it would appear first. The heir said it would be soon. He suggested waiting a little, it will form now. The heroine saw a little girl. She looked like a doll, not a person. The heroine was glad that her beloved Mel had come. Emma looked at this with a strange look. The boy asked not to misunderstand him, because he was just passing by. The dream master was surprised to see the girl looking at them. It seemed to him that the doll was heading towards them. The girl said she understood. and the prince shouted that he hadn't come to her on purpose. The doll, embarrassed, said that if the prince was bored she would have told him, she would have been happy. The prince, also shy, decided however to say that he missed her. Emma realized that this was His Majesty's first love, and kept watching. The girl said that Mel was very cute, but the little prince didn't like it because she spoke to him like a child again. The prince asked if there was a way to quickly end this performance. The girl thought that he was embarrassed. To this, the heroine replied to the boy that, "Unfortunately, no, and any memory will disappear on its own when it ends. Or they will have to leave the room." The prince replied that this is some kind of curse. The prince was thinking about what to do now, while the dream master watched the memory of what was happening. That girl said she missed him too, and the prince asked her if she grabbed all the men by the hands. Then Emma wondered if she could keep watching this. The doll said there was no need to be shy. Only the two of them were here. But that wasn't the case. There was also a prince there, who had already grown up. And Emma, the girl said that even when they are together, she is constantly worried. She said she was thinking about the future without him, and imagining how she would have to face it later. She also asked what would happen to them when His Majesty found out about them. He said, taking the younger prince's hand. The boy said that as soon as he received the title of prince, he would get his father to accept his engagement. He said he wouldn't have to wait for him in a place like this anymore. The boy said he needed to have a little more patience. He gave her his word. The boy needs to gain power to protect the girl. They cannot forever depend on the help of their mother. And her uncle, the little heir, should be able to protect his love on his own. The boy gave the girl that bright scarlet brooch. And at that moment, the prince's memories began to fade. Emma was thinking about how romantic the young man was for his 13 years. She saw him and told the heir that after the memory fragment, something remained. If the artisan understood correctly, even the girl who was so dear to His Highness, even she could not survive this story and marry the prince. After everything that was happening, the boy said he was going to vomit. The girl thought that imagining something in her head and seeing it with her own eyes was completely different. Emma thought she must be suffering a lot and decided that she needed to distract him. The girl advised the prince not to think about bad things, but to look at her. She asked the prince to check the secret dance technique. He showed it to her once, and the prince looked at her inquisitively and asked what he could do. She asked if the prince knew a dance called the log. He tests the wooden limits of all humanity. The heroine said that this dance is her strong point. Remember, they once even told her that she didn't have any joints. The prince said it seemed like she didn't know how to dance. Then Emma offered him a cobra dance, to which he asked if she was trying to comfort the boy. But the girl suddenly asked him if he was worried, and looked at him with a worried expression. The prince said that usually they don't ask about such things, and he smiled at the artisan. He picked Emma up again. She was confused and repeated his words about how cute she was. The heroine said she was amazed at herself, to which he replied that he would have locked her up. And she asked him why else. But the boy, without answering the question, asked Emma if she could turn into animals in real life. But she replied that this was impossible, even with polymorphism. It turned out the boy put a leash on the girl. Then Emma realized that this was her chance. A reliable protection in the person of the crown prince. The artisan replied that in her dreams, she would always remain an animal, which surprised the boy that she would remain only in her dreams. She said that when the boy returns to reality, she will still not stop sleeping and will continue dreaming. Emma hoped the prince would tell her that he needed her even after everything was over. The prince thought about it a lot and realized that he hadn't thought about it before, but they could always see each other before going to bed. He concluded that he could hug everything he wanted. And besides, they got along well and she knew how to comfort. She can also be cute. Looking at her, he added that she is even very cute. The prince was thinking that maybe it would work. He said hopefully. The boy quietly said that maybe he could put up with Emma. But the girl didn't hear him and asked him if he had said anything. Then the prince saw the pendant left after replaying the memory. He said that was the source. He said that for some reason there was no reaction, and he thought he knew the reason. But then something unimaginable and terrible started to happen. Emma thought she would be back to reality. But this did not happen, and then what really happens. The heroine called His Highness. She asked him if he was there, and told him it was dark, and that she couldn't see anything. The girl politely asked the boy to answer if he was there, to which he replied immediately. The heir let Emma know that he was here, and told her not to be afraid. Emma felt much better with these words. She asked what he was touching so hard, to which the boy replied that it was him. The prince asked if she could stop pressing herself against his face like that. Her cheeks were stinging, to which the girl replied that she was scared, since the darkness was impenetrable. The prince advised the artisan to hide behind his neck, since she couldn't sit there. But Emma didn't want to. The heroine asked where they were, why it was so dark here. She hoped they wouldn't be dragged further into the abyss. But the prince wasn't sure about it. The boy peered into the darkness and saw that there was something there. Emma decided to look closer, and saw it too. They saw figures of people, although blurry. The girl asked the prince if this was his memory. Emma noticed that it still seems like it is. Only normally, the memory is recreated in the way the dream owner remembered it. Even if a person has amnesia, memories appear fully. They appear fully because they have not disappeared from memory, but simply have been hidden deep inside us. However, the thing is different with those that the owner denies. That is, for self-defense purposes. The brain itself creates false memories. This happens in cases where you reject or evade your own past. If such a memory is buried so deeply, almost next to the abyss, it is only preserved vaguely. If such fragments arise in your memory, you take them as nonsense because your brain has already been deceived by false images of the past. In this way, you protect your soul from pain. The girl suggested that this memory was really important, but it would also be the most painful memory they had ever seen. This is a memory that the prince would rather not remember. The prince said that everything is in order, because the dream master is next to him. Knight Gryden said that it was as if he had become some kind of mongrel. At the moment when the heroine realized that the fragments were taking shape, the knight said that this snake emperor had reduced him to the level of a chained dog. Now he has a leash around his neck, which prevents him from acting. The knight said he couldn't stand it, that he was fed up, that he was better. He was better, but then the girl interrupted him and told him not to rush. Emma thought for a long time who it could be, and then she realized that it was the Empress. She told the man that if he makes hasty decisions, they will only get worse. She turned to her brother. The knight said that Marcel grew up very smart and grasps everything on the fly. He has a talent beyond his years. It turns out that this Gryden detachment knight, whom the Empress called brother, is the crown prince's uncle. The knight said that Marcel is still a child, but he is sure that he will not follow in his father's footsteps. He will definitely become a just ruler who will share our interests. But the Empress asked the man if he needed a reminder of what happened to the Horn family. The prince's mother said that only the Vaillant family remained on their side. They were waiting for the girl to become the prince's fiancée. And if something went wrong, then the end would come for everyone. The Empress told her brother not to force her to repeat the same thing. She just needed to wait for the right moment and have a little patience, at least until the ceremony where powers would be transferred to Gavi. Emma couldn't understand what they were talking about. Memory fragments can be destroyed, but they cannot be fabricated. Anyone will understand that they are weaving intrigues. The artisan remembered those twins from the Vaillant family. The Empress suggested waiting until the girl became the official fiancée, whose name was Gabi. Emma reasoned and realized that all these children could be involved in treason, and that the Emperor's sickly suspicion was not an illness. The heroine was talking about whether everyone close to His Highness really was. But then she was interrupted. Then the artisan realized that she was running out of strength. She wouldn't last any longer. The boy understood her and also said that in any case, they were just her hallucinations. The boy added that it was also a false illusion. And the moment Emma woke up, the prince asked her not to leave him. At that moment, the girl realized that she should hurry and told the heir that she would return immediately. And she gave him her word. In that darkness, the prince's face could not be seen, but his trembling voice could. By touching him, the girl realized that the prince was crying. The girl woke up with a strange feeling that someone was sitting on her. And looking up, she realized it was an elephant. The dream master respectfully asked her to move away from him. But while she lay there, she saw His Highness. Emma asked for help, but he came for this. The heroine asked, but he replied negatively to her question and said that he had come to look at the elephant. The boy said that the elephant is sitting comfortably. He clearly likes being here. So Emma must have patience. He said it's not difficult, animals are always right. And there is no need to bother them with your human ignorance. The heroine realized that the prince immediately moved away from her as soon as she turned into a human. What a tyrant! The man asked the elephant if he would carry him on his back, to which the elephant agreed. As soon as the girl woke up, she shouted that the elephant smelled and wanted to tell him to get off immediately. But she was already in the real world. But the heroine was still upset, probably because deep down she understood that the prince would have done exactly that to her. Emma saw Sir Christian and asked where Mason was. And Alex? He replied that he kicked them out because they were making too much noise, and that he would call them back now. The artisan said that if they are sleeping, then there is no need to wake them up. The story certainly hurts them. But after realizing what he said, Emma thought about it because it shouldn't be that she could sleep. The heroine decided to ask how long she had slept. She assumed it was a day, but one day was not enough. Then she guessed it was 2. But the knight said that 5 days had passed since she fell asleep. The girl thought about how the prince felt. She was sure that at that moment he was crying. The artisan not only left him alone in such a place, but also sleeps without his hind legs. A nightmare. The dream owner cannot leave the dream owner for so long. Otherwise, she will have to return. After the knight heard this, he said that she should first discuss this with Mason. But the heroine did not have time. She wanted to tell the knight that there was no time. But he closed her mouth with a spoon containing food. Christian said that he understands that time is short, but that the girl definitely needs to eat. The man said that while she sleeps, her stomach sings serenades to the food throughout the entire empire. The knight was pointing out that it is necessary to rest at least a few times. He wanted to bring the doctor and Mason. And while he was doing this, Emma had to eat, to which she explained that His Highness was crying alone there. Christian asked her if he was crying, and the girl replied by telling him that she had no time to think about food, that she should hurry. The girl suggested that the prince was perhaps still shaking with sobs somewhere deep in the dream, to which he replied that the prince, of course, was calm, but he was not a weakling at all. Emma was shocked by what the knight called His Highness. The heroine told the man how he should know that, because such an insensitive person has no right to judge anyone. To which Christian replied that he listened to her and told her to eat while he chased the boys. Christian explained that he is no less worried about the prince, but that if the situation is as critical as the girl says, then strength will be needed to cope with it. He added that his well-being now directly affects the heir's well-being. The girl thought about this and realized that the knight said everything correctly, although his words sent shivers down her spine. But due to her impatience, Emma could not be near the prince when it was so necessary. While Emma was thinking, Mason entered the room. He ran to the heroine, hugged her, and told her that he was very worried about her, because it was the first time she had slept for so long. The boy asked her if she had eaten, to which he shouted and asked where the dessert was. The lady would not be satisfied. The knight asked the girl to try not to strain herself as much as this time. The girl replied that she had rested enough, especially since only 1 week remained, and she needed to hurry. If the prince is still in the far depths of the subconscious, it will not be possible to establish contact so easily. Emma tried to enter his mind, but nothing worked. If nothing works out this way, then she has no choice but to act using the proven method. The girl apologized for her rudeness and lay down on the prince, hugging him. As the girl delved into the prince's dream, this time she dreamed of being a large animal, at least no smaller than a savanna cat. As the heroine thought, the prince was still in that darkness. It seemed like he had been sitting here alone all this time. Emma looked at her hands and saw huge jelly paws. The girl supposed she had turned into a love tiger, but her voice sounded terrifying. The girl called His Highness. The prince was in shock. He did not expect to see a huge tiger. To make sure, he also called Emma, to which she told him that she was the one who turned into the tiger. The heroine looked at the boy and wondered why he was making such a face. If something was wrong with her, or she looked strange. Then the girl remembered that she was now an Amur tiger, and perhaps the prince was scared. The artisan wondered why the prince wasn't answering, but then he said that he was almost going crazy here. The guy took the tiger by the muzzle and said that the beast was fierce if he didn't eat it. But she told the prince that, although she had the form of a tiger, she had no desire to eat human flesh. Although the prince loves animals, he will still be afraid of the tiger. The boy said that the artisan is so big that she is scary, but that he prefers cute animals and small ones. Said the tigress, but she has the softest fur. To which the prince said that, on the contrary, it has the hardest fur. The heroine thought, it seems His Majesty really doesn't like this. The prince asked the tiger if they could get out of here. Emma replied that, of course they could, but that they also needed to find the source. The guy stroked the tiger's tail and said that he was already fed up with these sources. He pointed to the painting he had already looked at hundreds of times. His Majesty also said that he had already learned all her lines by heart. But then another memory replayed, or rather, a continuation of the past, where the prince's uncle said he would wait until the end of the ceremony, and then he wouldn't wait a second longer. Emma and the prince sat aside and watched the memory, and the artisan at that moment was thinking that she hadn't seen this last time, which means that what they saw was not the entire memory. The boy's mother said that Marcel is only 13 years old. Why rush in such a hurry? It can only turn out detrimental. His brother told him that his young age is not a problem. On the contrary, it is time, since being a child he is more obedient. The knight said that then his reputation would be doomed. To which the mother replied that it was only damage. But the man replied that it was all nonsense. But then his brother asked him how he was going to gain power. If something like that stopped him, Marcel would become an instrument exactly as he is now. The knight also added that the prince was still young and inexperienced. Only thanks to this would he be of some use. The tigress fell horrified upon hearing the words. And then the heroine realized that they wanted to put a puppet prince on the throne. It was simply creepy. The empress asked the knight how long Marcel would remain like this. What would they do when he grew up? She understood everything and moved away from them. The man grabbed his sister's hands and asked her what they should do now. Give up and chase after the Horn family, or something like that. He asked the empress how long she was going to pretend to be a righteous woman. Emma realized that they were resolutely opposed to the emperor. Probably neither the empress nor her brother were satisfied with the concentration of power solely in the hands of the monarch. They were planning a coup d'etat to place a very young prince on the throne and snatch their piece of power with their hands. The only thing that motivated them was the thirst for power. They don't care at all about the problems of the people. They don't care about masters like Emma or anyone else. For them, people were just a useful resource to achieve certain goals. Perhaps they didn't cut off heads like the emperor. He, the empress, and the prince's uncle found another way to torture the poor child. Here the memory playback ended. And His Majesty said that he did not know where the source was. What he should find, he didn't understand either. The Dream Master asked him how he felt. At first he was simply silent and did not want to comment on it. But then he hugged the tiger and told her that at first it hurt to listen to everything. But after a couple of 100 times, he got used to it. Emma felt very sorry for him. The heroine thought she couldn't sit in one place. Otherwise, the same fragments would start chasing her. The tigress threw the prince on top of her and ran, saying she would get him out of here. If they are not in the deepest parts of the subconscious, they will definitely find a way out. The artisan was sure that the exit was somewhere nearby. But there were no paths. The prince said it was as if they were marking time in the same place. The tigress said that one cannot simply leave this place. Then they had only one thing left. Emma asked if the prince was telling her the truth about this. But then he interrupted her and immediately replied no. The tigress exclaimed because anyway, she will die soon if she doesn't achieve anything. She asked the prince if he really didn't trust her at all. The prince thought that she hadn't changed one bit. Only in size. The boy said that she is cute, even in tiger form. Or is it her who is cute? They hugged, and the prince looked Emma in the eyes. This lasted quite a while, so the girl decided that she needed to move him away. But she miscalculated her strength. She thought, my mother's family almost threw the boy into the abyss. What a nightmare. His Majesty said that with one more compliment. And it would seem like he would bite her head off. The artisan asked him if he was all right. To which His Majesty replied that he was simply a fragile person. Emma thought that compared to tigers, all people seem fragile. But no matter how much they communicate, we can safely say that this is not about him. The prince defeated a dragon with a single sweep of his sword a few days ago. The prince asked the artisan if physical attacks would work against annoying things. But the tigress replied that they would not work, since it was an ordinary illusion. She asked the boy if he remembered what she told him last time. That fragments are remnants of memories. The heroine said she imagined that he had a magical device with recordings somewhere around, and accidentally found it. He looked at it and wanted to get rid of it. The prince interrupted Emma and continued saying that he would simply break the ball into pieces so that the recordings could not be restored. To which the girl got scared and said that she couldn't break his head. But the prince did not mean this. He asked the heroine if all tigers are naturally bloodthirsty. The boy said he started to seriously worry about his head while next to her. His Majesty said he had had enough, that he was tired of searching for the source, and asked to erase Emma's memory. But the girl said that she could not completely erase the memories. She asked what if they somehow changed the content of the magic ball. She thought and said, maybe just write something about the previous one. And then the Dream Master realized that it was possible to create new fragments. This requires new emotional memories, and more powerful ones that will overshadow those hidden in the farthest corners of the inner world. But there is one problem, said Emma. All memories of this place will disappear. The girl asked the boy if he was sure. But the prince didn't care. If he didn't die, then it was fine. But Emma asked again if he would definitely not regret it. They had come a long way. The boy asked the artisan what else she intended to do. Watch the two-actor theater for the rest of their days. To which she replied maybe not. The tigress said they needed a memory, one that would help cover this up. The prince asked the artisan if she had any ideas. Emma suggested putting her head in the tiger's mouth. She is sure it will be an unforgettable experience. But the prince threatened that he himself would give her an unforgettable experience. The tigress apologized, and the boy asked if there was really a more suitable plan. Emma decided to offer to carry His Majesty on her back. This is quite unusual. The boy said he noticed when the artisan appears and disappears. Even the weather changes. The tigress replied that the sky is the master's territory. The prince asked if it was the Dream Master. The boy realized and asked Emma if it turns out that she can partially control someone else's dream. To which she replied that a small adjustment before sleep is possible. But after the girl falls asleep, she has little influence over anything. She can only predict when she herself will wake up. She said that although she is a dream master, in someone else's dream, like a fish in water, here it is the prince who sets the main tone, based on how he feels and what he sees. The prince thought if the sky is the dream master's territory, then his territory, based on this, is the earth. Emma said that everything is true, and what he sees on earth is a reflection of his subconscious. But then the prince asked, "What about the entities?" The boy immediately asked Emma if she was calling entities. She couldn't believe what she heard, and asked him again. She thought about it and decided to summon the guardian spirits to ask them if it was possible to summon them at this time. Tigress decided to ask His Highness if he trusted her, and he replied again, saying 25. The girl said that without his trust in the heroine, she could not summon her own essence. And by the way, these are guardian spirits. The boy asked again. Guardian spirits, but was the girl offended? She tried very hard. But he didn't. On the other hand, the girl could understand him. His father constantly told him, since childhood, not to trust anyone. And his mother and uncle only made the situation worse. Surely the prince was alarmed at any step forward. But then His Majesty asked her to just trust her. The boy said he believed her. Emma was very surprised that it happened so quickly. The boy said that she herself asked him. To which the tigress replied that this was unusual. So fast and immediate. She added that she was a very trusting person. Then the heroine said that anyway. The call of the guardian spirits would not work at the first whistle. Emma said she didn't believe the prince, because His Highness taught her not to trust anyone. The boy replied that this is true, but that it is not the same as His Highness, and he does not suspect without a good reason. But then the guy said that he didn't believe that he seriously talked about trust issues, and that he could change his mind at any moment. That's why he said there was no reason to rejoice. It was very superficial, and Emma was also a little shocked. Then she asked the prince if this could be considered superficial. Guardian spirits are a fairly common legend among the inhabitants of Frodberg. They reflect the gift of their owner. However, you rarely see them from any master. That's why the legend says that you can find a guardian spirit only by fulfilling certain conditions. And for each master it is different, just like the appearance of the spirit. For example, for a dream master, the condition is the trust of the dream owner. The stronger the trust of the dream owner, the more guardian spirits the master has. This allows the dream master's gift to be utilized to the fullest. The heroine thought, if this is superficial trust, what then is sincere faith and deep understanding of the prince? The prince said that what is happening now is a very impressive spectacle. He said he thought her perfume was beautiful, and that it matched the name. The boy asked the tigress why she was depressed, if something was wrong, to which she replied that she just realized again that everything was wrong. The girl thought it seemed strange to her that he believed it so easily. And the prince just wanted to look, because they were animals. The boy touched the tigress and asked her what she had misunderstood, and looked at her as if he were in her soul. The girl was curious to know how people who only believe in animals are called living believers. Or maybe Bershivan the heroine. She told the boy that they arose from the deepest part of his inner world. And then a surprisingly lively faith appeared, to which he said it sounded like sarcasm. His Majesty asked if they shouldn't have already left the dream world, and why they were still here. To this, the tigress replied that they had not yet found the source. She explained that they were simply pulled out of the depths of the subconscious thanks to the prince's great faith in animals, even summoning the spirits. The prince said he knew the tigress was mocking him. Emma thought that it wasn't that the prince was completely wrong, but that the girl herself declared that the prince could come to his senses if he found the source in the deepest part of his subconscious. But thanks to the guardian spirit, they only returned to the beginning. There is no turning back. Now His Majesty's memories are blocked by the guardian spirit's power. The prince asked the girl what was next, and she replied that now there was no point in returning to the depths. She would have to find another way to replace the source of the past. In another way, the boy asked. Emma asked him if he remembered what she said before. She repeated to the prince that he needed to seek support from the people around him. And that anger was not the solution. The boy said there was also something about the shoots under the ashes that need support to grow. Emma replied with a smile on her face that it was so. That's right. The boy kept remembering what Emma had said, and said that a place, a thing that was significant to him, as well as some actions, beliefs, wishes, love, faith, that was all the girl then listed for him. To which she said it was simply phenomenal. Everything was exactly like that. The prince asked why his trust in her couldn't serve as a source. Because in the end the spirits arrived. Which means there was faith. But the heroine repeated the prince's words, where he said that faith is superficial. Then the boy asked her how much she needed to believe. To which she replied that it wasn't about the degree of trust. He achieved it only because the artisan had the form of an animal. He asked what was wrong then. It was Emma after all. But she said everything was wrong at all. His Majesty said he didn't quite understand what the girl was trying to convey. But he understood that this was the most important thing. Emma asked him what he understood. To which he replied that attachment is the basis of the source. Faith is attachment to some truth, desires. And love itself is impossible without attachment to an object. The prince admitted that something between them prevented affection from the beginning. The guy said that when the artisan calls him His Majesty. It sounds too prim. Emma asked how she should call him now. And he suggested calling him Master. The tigress was shocked by such news, and suggested leaving everything as it was, since it suited her better. The heroine pronounced the word master, and thought that at this rate she would become a pet. The prince looked at her and realized that the tigress had all her thoughts written on her face. He laughed and again told Emma how cute she was. He was simply going crazy because of it. They lay down on the grass, and the prince said that it seemed to him that he couldn't be more attached, or that he needed to add more. The heroine said that this affection is directed solely towards animals. To which the boy replied that she had that appearance. What was wrong with him? But the artisan said that was the problem. The tigress told the prince, let's be honest now. He will like any animal. And he must fall in love with her specifically. Suddenly, the girl regained her senses, and told the prince to forget these words. It sounded too stupid. Drop it. The girl explained that the attachment to all animals is a little different. Too abstract. She explained that he should distinguish her from the whole crowd. And she should also feel affection only for him. The boy said that for him, she is not an ordinary animal. And common, but a special animal. After the prince said she was a special animal, she got annoyed because she was still an animal. The prince had a complete feeling that the tigress was not happy at all. To which she asked what could be said. The girl was annoyed that in the prince's eyes she was still an animal. The boy began to exclaim that she should say something that he liked as a person. To which she replied that it was natural. Emma said it didn't seem like much. But the artisan wanted him to consider the tigress as him. Something like a human friend. The boy concluded that Emma wants him to love her, and said that he was brave. The heroine realized that this still sounded unusual. The prince said that love in relation to a person and in relation to an animal are very different things. She understood, but friendship is also a kind of love. At that moment, His Majesty said that he loves animals by definition. The owner said that this does not require any special trust. He continued because they are in his hands, too dependent as they have no will of their own. If you love and appreciate them until the end of the allotted time, they, without any doubt, will respond to him in the same way. Emma was thinking in her mind, why doesn't he get a pet animal? What does she have to do with it? The heroine decided to ask the owner why he never had pets. But if she was wrong, she asked him to correct her. He replied that she was the only one he wanted to have. Emma imagined a situation where he would chain her. And the heroine immediately got goosebumps. The girl told the boy to stop saying that it's just some kind of obsession. But he himself didn't know what to do about it. Then the tigress decided to ask about the prince's love for people in this case. The prince said that he believes that loving a person requires sacrifice. Emma realized that his heart was still soft and romantic, or was it because he was only 19 years old? His Majesty said that you cannot buy a person's heart so easily, and that you cannot tie them to yourself by force. To which the girl replied that his words were starting to scare her. She continued that if he is not willing to sacrifice everything for the love of a person, then he shouldn't try. He constantly looked at the tigress when she asked if she didn't like him, to which she replied that it was not so. The boy concluded that it turns out she likes him. But the girl objected and asked why he twisted her words like that. The heroine replied that she did not consider him a man, that essentially he was not her type. The prince was baffled by such a comment directed at him, and threateningly told her to repeat what she had said. But in the girl's thoughts, there was only one thing. Again his face, this is heavy artillery. Dangerous, he took her by the face. And she said she didn't know anything. Her heart wasn't pounding. But in a moment, she noticed that Thanatos withered and turned black, and she simply said that he wasn't her type. He immediately exclaimed that his heart was still beating against his ribs nonstop. Then the prince turned around and smiled, saying he knew it. The boy said that nothing could be done, since she didn't like the word master. So he allowed her to call him Mel. Did the girl only now pay attention to the trees surrounding her? It's possible it's a peach tree. The prince probably created them. Emma remembered what these flowers symbolized. Not death at all. But anyway, she didn't remember what they meant in the language of flowers. Then the prince smilingly asked the tigress if he could call her Emmy. At such a question, the girl became mentally confused. The heroine told the boy that it sounded more like a dog's name. The artisan asked to confess where such awful names came from. The prince said that actually it was in his name Emma. Said the heroine, "That's right, if you change the last letter it will be Emmy. Or Miles." But the tigress only accepted the name Emily. The prince said she was the first, and asked him to call him by his name. At first she failed because she was used to saying sir. But once she managed to do it, but not out loud. The boy asked louder and clearer since he couldn't hear. The girl thought that the emperor seemed to have another reason to kill her. But there was no way to go against the stubborn prince. And then she managed to do it right. The prince was very happy. And he also replied to her by calling her Emmy. The heroine realized that in the end, she had become Emmy. At that moment, she and the prince were lying under a tree. The prince asked what they should do now. But the tigress didn't understand what he meant, and asked in what sense. He replied that Emma said she should fall in love with the artisan. But the girl said she hadn't said that. To which the boy replied that he had already forgotten his own words. Then the heroine asked him if he was deliberately mocking the artisan. His Majesty said he was just trying to find the source. As the artisan said, she replied that it would be better to think alone. It would obviously be faster. The boy thought that he was actually joking. But why did he feel uncomfortable himself? According to the prince, this place no longer resembles the most common human dream. He was already thinking about how to wake up. What else should he do? The prince lay down and looked at the sky. But suddenly a tigress approached and asked him if there was anything he particularly regretted. The boy expected her to come up with something new. But again, they were talking about the past. To which she replied negatively to the artisan. The heroine said that this was an instant response, and said that for decency's sake, he would have at least thought about it. But he replied that he really didn't know her. The girl thought that all this was useless, and she herself didn't expect him to separate immediately. Most clients ask the master to dispel any personal regrets, at least in the dream world. Even Lord Ed himself turned, because he sincerely did not want to express his feelings for his first love after 50 years. Perhaps His Highness is more worried about the future. But this is no reason to neglect the present. The prince always suppressed his emotions, but because any manifestation of them could become. And then the girl began to think. Why could this become a source? She guessed. The artisan asked His Highness to be honest with his feelings, and corrected herself by saying Mel, not Your Highness. Then she asked him to tell her what he himself felt. The girl said she knew he didn't allow himself to do this before because of his status. But while they are in a dream, they must try. She assured him that there was no one here, and that no one would find out. But the prince remained silent. Emma said that it was actually much easier than it seemed. So she opened her mouth and began to try. The artisan waited impatiently for him to say something, and they would finally get out of here. But it happened that the prince threw her out of there again. Emma was annoyed by this. Marcel and Grant, the word team fits perfectly to describe their life. A simple mechanism that does its usual job. Resigned to its function, to such an extent that its teeth have become quite dull. But it still spins out of inertia. Again and again. When the prince began to see this world in other colors, only light and darkness remained. Black and white. It was a world where there was only a dull gray. The prince got used to this world so quickly that he didn't even notice that along with the colors, he had lost his mind. He gradually began to lose the ability to distinguish the faces of the people around him. First of all, he did not see the face of the emperor. And then, he did not recognize the face of the emperor's advisor, or even that of the common servants. And common ones. At first it looked like a small spot, or a blurry spot. It was as if the person's face was simply blocked by a drop of black liquid that accidentally got into the eye. The servants asked him if everything was fine with him, to which he replied that everything was fine. However, over time, the size of this incomprehensible substance began to increase, until it finally began to envelop the whole body. Then the prince could distinguish people only by clothes, voice, and physique. However, for security reasons, he could not tell anyone about the changes that had happened to him, and show others the side of himself that they wanted to see. The prince stopped trusting even his own eyes. Every day it got worse. If he really sees hallucinations. If this is what impending madness looks like. He could not find an exact answer. It is known that a sick person is not fully capable of realizing that he is going crazy. And the prince was not sure of the reality of what was happening. He was no longer sure of anything. Of how he could continue living. He was simply prolonging this existence. The guy is like a living corpse that keeps functioning. Rather out of habit, he could no longer do this. He didn't know how long he could last. Maybe it was that day when he reached his limit. After all, he saw for the first time that the emperor appeared before him in the guise of a headless dragon. The emperor asked him what it was. But the prince was surprised that he was in his chambers, although he had just been in His Majesty's office. The prince thought and said that he should start reducing the dosage of sleeping pills. And besides, someone told him that he needs to normalize his sleep-wake schedule, and at least open the curtains, and let the sunlight in. This will help. It turns out the doctor told the boy this. The prince thanked him and said he would follow his recommendations. From the moment, the boundaries of reality began to collapse. His Majesty was afraid to get out of bed. It was getting darker before his eyes, gradually sinking into complete darkness, in which he clearly heard the sounds made by the headless dragon. This drove the prince even crazier. It didn't let me sleep. He even started counting his breaths to stay sane. But even if he somehow managed to fall asleep, he constantly had nightmares. In one dream, someone told him that his father was a monster, and that he had to kill him. This someone continued by saying that it is necessary to pierce the imperial heart. He will immediately feel better, and the boy will finally sleep well. At that moment, someone called His Majesty and told him that he needed to undergo an examination. But that voice kept saying that he couldn't trust anyone, that his father was a murderer, and that he had broken the prince, That voice said that he wanted to pierce his heart with a sword until he died. He, the prince, thought that it would be better for him to be killed than his father. From then on, His Majesty began to dream of eternal sleep. The guy wanted to sleep until he lost his pulse, until he lost something else. The prince also added that he wants to remain human until his death. And this darkness is pacifying in its own way. Then the prince came out of his train of thought and realized that the tigress had disappeared. He thought that next time she would speak up because he accidentally scared her away. He hoped that next time she would be gentler. Otherwise, he would be screwed. The boy thought about the need to be honest with his feelings. And he couldn't understand why she needed this. He thought about what would happen when the truth was revealed. Maybe she would run away completely. He wondered when Emma would return. At first, he decided to keep her by his side, just out of curiosity. Since she was the only creature speaking in this world. The girl is really cute. Especially when she makes a face. And she is also resourceful, energetic. Sometimes cowardly, and sometimes brave. Even when she is conceited, she knows how to remain the same. Very sweet. Usually, the prince easily reads the intentions of the people around him. So he believed that he could read the artisan without much difficulty. But she still remains a mystery to the boy because she desperately wants to wake him up. Unless to save his life. Maybe the emperor is blackmailing her. The prince, while lying there, began to reason and even began to think that he was not indifferent to her after all. His Majesty thought about the charming animal she was. But he remembered that she was human. The guy lost everything due to his own stupidity and incompetence, so loneliness became his only true companion. Opening up to someone meant the same as signing his own death warrant for him. It would be easier not to contact anyone at all. Why then does he eagerly await Emma invading his dream again? And here she will manage as if at home, awakening the prince's memories. The boy is very afraid that the dream mistress will run away and leave him. He was willing to do anything. So he asked the fox not to leave. At one point, the prince heard someone's voice. He turned around and saw that Emma had called him. She was already in a new appearance. She started talking again. When His Majesty wakes her up, he experiences unbearable pain. But the prince only asked Emma to call him Marcel and to address him as before. She said she didn't care about Marcel or Schmarmel, but that the prince was simply moved by her. The girl realized that her words sounded like peas against the wall. That really angered her. The boy promised that this would not happen again, and that he would not kick her out again. He asked for forgiveness, to which the girl replied that so be it. She believed the prince. The heroine understood that the deadline was expiring, and that nothing would work out without a long rest. The artisan told the prince that she was worried this might be their last meeting. But he asked her puzzled why. The girl replied that the time allotted by the emperor for this mission was running out. And if Mel doesn't wake up, then all the inhabitants of Frodberg, including Emma, are doomed. Although she is not sure that. Even if he succeeds, no one will touch her. For now, her only chance to escape oppression. But since the prince understood nothing, he asked the girl what she meant. Why suddenly all the inhabitants of Frodberg were doomed to what she replied. That people might think that the curse had made itself felt again. The boy asked. The girl spoke about what happened 500 years ago, which she confirmed. Emma said that her case has a lot in common with what happened to all the descendants of the cursed family. The prince remembered the eternal sleep since he was 18. From the outside to many, it might seem that this is the case. However, if the prince's memory doesn't fail me, they did not experience symptoms of madness. There is some kind of black magic involved in this case. The owner asked the girl why she hadn't told him sooner. She replied that the process would not have been accelerated anyway. The boy, on the contrary, would have been burdened with unnecessary thoughts. But now he understood what the emperor was blackmailing her with. Mel asked Emmy if His Majesty really believed that everything was a curse. To which the girl replied that he cited this as the fundamental cause in their first meeting. The heroine understood that it did not seem like the emperor was particularly concerned with cause and effect relationships. He simply demanded the girl's participation. So she told the prince that she wasn't sure about anything at all. The prince thought that, most likely, the emperor knew that this was not the case. He simply wanted to give the matter a legal appearance. If the prince does not come to his senses, the curse will be an excellent excuse in the eyes of his loyal subjects. It's all because of genocide. He is still obsessed with it. But the prince can avoid it all if he wakes up. However, as the artisan said, there is no guarantee that the emperor will not touch anyone. Even if he succeeds, the lives of the inhabitants of Fruitberg will still be in danger. Emma called the prince, who responded, and asked her what it was, addressing her by the name Spotted Fawn. While the girl was lost, the prince asked the artisan if she knew why he had fallen asleep. The artisan replied that generally speaking, but in her head, a thought was revolving with the version that, most likely, it was due to psychological trauma and its consequences. Mel asked if she had shared her conjectures with the emperor, to which she replied negatively. The prince said that this was excellent, because he could still be the cause of his illness. Emma asked the boy again, and said that he heard nothing. Or then the prince interrupted her, and confirmed that he had said everything exactly like that. The dream master was horrified by what she heard. The Prince of Death wants them, or something like that. The boy said that if you carefully study the original historical notes. But then he asked Emmy if she was listening to him. The boy told the girl to listen because he had an idea. The last descendant of the original imperial family was Lucas VII. He already knew the fate that awaited him. He knew that the day he came of age, he would fall asleep forever. Luke tried with all his might to find a way to remove the curse from himself. But in the end, he visited the island and learned the will of God. He knew that the end of the road would be marked by the new refuge that gave him his start. The prophecy turned out to be very vague. It could be interpreted in different ways. Overwhelmed by horror on the eve of his own death, Luke understood it literally and decided that it was necessary to shed the blood of the inhabitants of Frotberg, who had cast a terrible curse upon him. As a result, he carried out a real massacre. Through his own stupidity, he signed a death sentence for himself and for many innocent people. Emma said that every inhabitant of Fruitberg remembers it, has heard this story at least once. The heroine asked what this guy had to do with it, to which the prince replied that they use predictions. The end of the road will be marked by new blood, the blood of those who gave him his start. If interpreted, new blood will sound in the sense of a descendant. That is, a bloody descendant of the inhabitants of Frodberg. That is, a master like Emma. And in confirmation of these words, the heroine will wake up the prince. But she thought about what would happen if the emperor believed that only the inhabitants of Frodberg would be able to lift the curse. There would be no genocide. Emma said she had an assistant, and that he was not from Frodberg. The heroine asked that, if possible, he should be saved too, but Mel replied that he promised nothing, but that he would try, to which the girl thanked him. But the boy told the girl to thank him later. He also said that he remembers when he said it was not worth it. But now he retracts his words. The boy said that perhaps as soon as he woke up, he would have to risk everything he could. But the girl said that she was not the only one. Mel said that this was also true. Then first they had to get out of here, for which the heroine was ready. She said they needed maximum sincerity. The girl looked the boy in the eyes and said that no matter what he said now, she swore that her attitude towards him would not change, and added that she would support him until the end. To which the prince said that he seemed to like her very much. The boy said he was afraid to meet her in real life, but at the same time, he looked forward to it with all his heart. Emma said that she was also afraid, because everything could be white and black blurry. The prince said he feared that, if he returned, things would get even worse. But the girl said there was no need to worry about that, because she would be there until he felt better. She promised him The boy asked Emma if she would really stay with him, to which she replied of course, because she was also too attached not to leave him in trouble. No matter what happened, that's how connections between people work. The prince said that what was said cannot be retracted, to which the girl said that it was time for him to wake up. Then His Highness opens his eyes and realizes how long he slept. But he woke up in an instant. He felt a breath nearby, and it was definitely not his. And he also felt a familiar warmth. The boy was scared and at the same time tremendously curious. He remembered Emma's question when she asked him if he was scared. And he said out loud that he wasn't scared. He looked at Emma and she looked at him. The prince said that she really was like a fox. The girl was very happy that the prince woke up. And then the prince said that the artisan's head was in place. Thank God. The girl said in her head that the prince here gave a completely different impression. Maybe it was his husky voice, she suggested, and said she would go call the doctor. But the guy grabs the artisan's hand and asks her where she went. They just met and she is already running out and doesn't even say hello. The heroine thought how sick he was if he had so much strength. The boy pulled her towards him, and it turned out that she was sitting on him. At that moment, the girl said she was very happy, since the prince regained his senses. The boy looked at her and smiled, and then replied that it was all thanks to her. Mel said it was nice to meet you, and that she was even more interesting in person. Then the doctor immediately ran to the prince and exclaimed that he was happy, and then said that all thanks to magic his body was fine. Alex said that due to her long stay in a coma, the prince would slow down for a while, but this would pass soon. The boy understood only by his voice that he was a doctor, because his face was still black. The doctor also asked if His Highness had any other complaints, to which he replied not much, only that his eyes hurt a little from the bright light. But otherwise, everything was normal. Alex said that, for now, the chambers would be dark for a while, but that the prince still needed to get used to the light. The prince thanked him and said he understood. The boy heard by ear that there were only 3 people in the room. The voices were masculine, which means one of them was a knight. The second, apparently, belonged to Emma's assistant. Marcel realized that nothing had changed in this reality. Behind Emma, he wondered if she was using some kind of magic. The boy only sees her. Only she illuminates the impenetrable darkness. He wanted to look at her closely. Emma saw that he was sitting up in bed and thought she wanted to tell him something. It turned out she was right, as the boy called her. But then Mason called the girl and asked her if she had seen how the perverted doctor pretended to be normal in front of the prince. Here it was, the healing power of power. But the doctor stood nearby and said that he had heard everything. At that moment, the prince called the knight and asked him if His Majesty had given the artisan a specific deadline and how many days were left until the end. The boy said that Christian can tell him that the prince has woken up, but that he himself would tell him everything else in a personal audience when he gets better. Until that moment, the guy asked the knight to remain silent, to which he replied that it would be as he ordered. And the prince also thanked Christian and said that without him, he was like having no hands. And the boy also said he needed peace. The knight bowed and said he would immediately get everyone out of here. But the prince only asked the dream master to stay with him. The girl wanted to ask Mel why he did that, but then he interrupted her and told her to come. The heroine asked him if he wanted anything now. He replied that at that moment it was difficult for him, so he asked her to come. He said several times that the girl needed to come closer and bow her head. The boy untied the girl's hair that had previously been tied in a bun and looked at her, admiring her beauty. The boy gently told the heroine in her ear that this way he felt much better. The artisan did not understand at all what was happening here. The boy asked the girl if something was wrong, to which she replied that she noticed that he did not perceive her as a person, although now she was in her true form. The girl added that this was not the case at all, to which the prince asked her how he could do that. Emma asked him again, but now, whether she was ashamed of the way they were sitting. The heroine wondered why he was sitting her on his lap, especially in bed. The boy didn't understand what was going on because she was almost lying on him while sleeping. The girl explained that this was part of the therapy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have ended up in his dream. Nothing would have worked for her. Then the prince decided to play a prank on her and tell the artisan to continue the therapy, since he was freezing without her warmth and needed a dose of healing hugs. Emma thought this was a kind of childish whim. She asked the boy why he was chasing the others away, to which he replied that they were bothering him. The girl asked why they were interfering, to which Mel replied that he wanted to be alone with the person he liked. That's why they were interfering. At first, the artisan didn't understand at all what he meant. The boy asked the girl if she still didn't understand. She didn't answer anything, then she touched his face with her hands and said that he liked her as a girl. The girl didn't understand him and wondered if he was saying it romantically and, if so, why. His Highness will become emperor in the future. Such a person suddenly became inflamed with feelings not for his real girlfriend, not for someone of suitable status, but for a representative of the lower class and, moreover, a master from the captured island. This is simply a disaster, because the emperor will execute Emma if he finds out. The artisan had just found a path to salvation, and then a new threat appeared. The girl believes that love for a person requires sacrifice. The artisan remembered that the prince is a romantic, and they are very much in love, so their feelings are not so serious in reality. The heroine told the prince not to be mistaken, because in the form of an animal, she was sweet to him. That's why he became fond of her, but this is not a reason for love. The boy asked what the girl was talking about, to which she replied that he was confusing liking with love. Mel asked Amy to wait, but she continued saying that this happens when you reveal your deepest feelings to a person, and you find solace. But that's not the case. At that moment, the boy interrupted her. The boy only told her not to call him Highness, and not to address him as you. The prince thought he had expressed himself clearly. What else should he say for the girl to understand what he feels? If it were his will, he would knock the girl down and press her against the bed so that she realizes the seriousness of what is happening. He told her that she herself asked for maximum sincerity. So why was she looking away now? The boy asked the girl to allow him at least to capture Amy's appearance in his memory. Then, if she suddenly disappeared into the darkness, like everyone else, he wanted to at least be able to imagine her beautiful eyes. The prince said that the girl was probably right. She was in a hurry. Apparently, he had already forgotten what it was like when someone liked him, and he didn't understand himself. To this, Emma replied that there was nothing wrong with it, and she smiled at him. The prince asked the girl if she would stay with him until he solved the problem, because without her, there was simply no way to do it. The boy reminded her that she promised to stay with him until the end. Mel took the girl's hand by the neck while she thought that she remembered that the promise was a little different. She wanted to tell the prince about it, but for some reason she couldn't. Emma told the prince to meet him. "This is your new father," to which he replied that he is not ready to accept a new father in the family. "Don't dare to take your mother away. Put the nonsense aside." Mason asked Alex what he was doing, and where did these dolls come from, to which he asked if he was talking about them, and showed them to the boy. Alex replied that he was portraying Mason's unspoken experiences. Mason only thought that he could report the doctor for insulting the ruling family. He wondered why he was sitting there and putting up with Alex's schizophrenia, especially behind bars. At one point, the knight took the boys behind bars and told them to stay here until they reached a verdict, which left Mason in complete shock. He asked Christian in what sense he meant the verdict. They woke up His Highness. Why was he doing this to them? Mason yelled at the knight to come. Where was he going? He, the doctor, said it was time to shut up. The guy again asked what sense to shut up, to which Alex said that the prince was fine for the people. It only remained to get rid of the witnesses so that everything would remain so. Mason asked. It turns out they will die, but the question about SRA formed in his head. Emma. But he realized that the prince would probably protect her. He clearly highlighted her. He even kept her with him. Alex began to sing. And Mason got the idea in his head that the doctor had already gone crazy. But then Alex stood in front of the boy. He didn't understand anything and asked what he wanted. But he didn't answer. He also asked what was wrong with him. But the doctor still didn't answer. Suddenly, the doctor looked angrily at the boy and asked him if Marcus was dead. There used to be a great sage and magician whose name was Marcus. And he had an unknown young student. He was smart and talented. And he was especially good at handling mana. But Marcus neglected his student and taught him nothing. Marcus said that the student was not capable of great things in the name of the grand. But the student was thinking about how he was different from the servants. If Marcus was not going to teach him, then another way had to be found. The student, who served his master for 7 years, was not going to tolerate such a decision. And in the end, he stole Marcus's spellbook and ran away. The boy thought that this could be considered payment for all his hard work. After this, the student discovered his talent for healing magic and began to study the art of medicine under the guidance of an experienced healer. And then he went to the palace, thanks to his talent and diligence. And the real knowledge he absorbed from that book was difficult even to imagine. Because after his death, Marcus left nothing of what he had researched to the world. Only rumors and conjectures. And then the doctor opened the gate and asked Mason if he would go. To which he replied that he thought he only practiced healing magic. Alex said that his talent knows no bounds. Mason became enraged and decided to ask why he didn't save him sooner. To which the doctor replied that if he wants to live, then he needs to have some aces up his sleeve. Mason asked the doctor if he knew many different spells. To which he replied that if it wasn't very complicated, then yes. Mason told the doctor that he can do many things. But why does he simply work as a doctor? To which Alex replied that one cannot rely on magic for everything. And the boy asked him why. To which he received the answer that it was an expensive pleasure. The use of magic involves the presence of mana that accumulates in the body from the air, in a word. Any craft requires a resource, whether you are a swordsman, mage, or similar. The doctor said that it only seems from the outside that everything comes from nothing. But in reality, mana is consumed. Alex said it's better for Mason not to know what will happen when it runs out. It turns out it's not such an omnipotent thing. Then the doctor suggests going to beg for freedom before Sir Christian returns. But for now, the crown prince is the only one who can help. But when they opened the doors of the prince's chambers, they saw that Emma and he were sitting on the bed and embracing. A little before this, Emma asked the prince what he would do if it turned out that he really liked her. What would be the point? Mel asked if logic is really needed even in such things. He just wants to be happy, like everyone else. Like her. Then he asked the artisan why she was looking at him like that. The boy told the girl that he remembered the words of the scripture, which says that only he who knows love can reach the arms of God without getting lost. The heroine asked him to help her not get lost, since she didn't want to go to hell. To which the prince replied that she reacted so sweetly that he couldn't resist. But the artisan replied that it was better not to, because when a man of supernatural beauty says this, the heart may not withstand it. Hence the boy fell into a stupor, and again asked about the man of supernatural beauty. The girl took the boy's hand for added effect, and told him to imagine that a woman of unimaginable beauty was doing this in front of him. He would be lucky if he didn't faint. He asked the artisan if he was really such a handsome boy. The heroine confirmed this fact, but the boy was not the right word, but a genius of pure beauty. Marcel asked the artisan about her assistant, and how handsome he thought he was. Emma asked him if he was talking about Mason, but the prince interrupted her, and asked her if you compare the two of them, who is more beautiful? The girl asked how they could be compared, to which the prince said that for a boy of his age, he was handsome in his own way. But what about Alex? Then the prince asked the mirror if he was the most handsome in the world. Emma replied to the prince that he was the most beautiful, so that he, in turn, would not worry. The boy asked the girl if this beauty suited his tastes, to which she replied that this beauty goes beyond the limits of taste preferences. Anyone would consider him unrealistically handsome. To all this the boy said that, like her, he is the most beautiful in the world. His Majesty said he wasn't joking at all. In his eyes, she is exactly like that. Emma replied to the prince that he had a specific taste, and she sat on the edge of the bed. The boy asked her where she was going, to which she replied that she felt warm. It was probably because she kept saying those embarrassing things. But the problem was that, being an animal, she perceived the prince and his personal space differently. The girl got out of bed and said that the world is full of beautiful people, and that to understand his tastes, she should learn more. The prince immediately yelled at Emma that he didn't need anyone, and asked the girl to come back. The artisan told Marcel that she had heard he had a fiancée named Lady Anderson. The heroine knows this because she herself saw His Majesty's past. And the girl also knew that he had no romantic feelings for her. But what about the lady herself? And if she loved him? The artisan decided that Mel himself was ready to establish connections with people on his own, and that the girl didn't need to be around. And the last thing she wanted in the world was to risk her life for this connection. She began to tell the prince that it was wrong to behave this way when he had a fiancée. It was wrong both in relation to Emma and to that lady. The prince didn't understand why the girl kept talking about other people, to which she replied that she would keep her promise and would stay close until Mel got better. So he doesn't need everything. But at that moment, the boy interrupted her by calling her. Marcel asked her to turn around and look at him, but she didn't understand how he managed to get up so quickly. The dream master asked her that he could get out of bed now. The prince closed the girl's eyes. She asked him to take his hand away and asked him what he was doing. The boy asked the girl what she would do if she saw things like this all the time. He continued by saying that even people would be seen through this black spot, behind which it is unclear what the person looks like or what is written on his face, even when there is a knight nearby. Called to protect him, he sees him only as a threat, or rather, he saw him as a monster, waiting for the moment to rip his head off with a bite. The prince explained that these are the feelings he experiences when looking at any of them. Mel asked the heroine if she were in his place, if she could see people in them, or fall in love with them. Emma thought it couldn't be that the prince couldn't see people's faces, so she asked the boy about it. But the girl knew and understood for sure that Mel was definitely looking directly into her eyes. His Majesty replied that he only sees her face. That's why he needs the heroine so much. The prince asked the artisan to stay with him until he felt better. The boy sat down on the bed and said that if the girl agreed, it would be heaven or hell for him, as long as she was nearby. Then he took her to his bed. At that moment, Emma saw the doctor with Mason, who entered the room and told the prince to let her be. But he interrupted the artisan and asked her not to tell anyone about this. It's their secret now. Mason approached from behind, which the girl did not expect, and apologized for his insolence. Marcel asked the boy what happened. That he already knew, to which Mason said that he was ready to answer for this. But first the boy asked His Majesty to explain why he hugged Mrs. Emma. Because he already has a fiancée. Mason asked the prince if he felt anything for his lady. While the boy expressed all this, the heroine stayed behind and was lost. She simply didn't recognize Mason. His Majesty said that the boy should introduce himself first, and then ask. Mason said his name and explained that he was the assistant to the Dream Master, to which the prince replied that Mason should relax, because he was not going to punish him. The guy told Mason to explain clearly now, and listened carefully. The assistant said that he did not understand why Emma was in bed with His Highness. To which he replied that it was all due to a curse, because of which, for some unknown reason, he can only be conscious when the dream master is by his side. The prince continued by saying that this is still speculation. But perhaps the fact is that the blood of a Frodberg resident runs in his veins, who cast the curse 500 years ago. Emma herself was surprised by such words. She thought, since when did this happen? Why did he decide that? Where did he get it from? His Majesty probably assumed that the girl would help him completely get rid of the curse. That's why they are testing different methods. And the Emperor will have to take into account that Mason is not to be touched. His Majesty said that he would not forget that Mason also stayed here to help him. The prince thanked the boy, to which he reciprocated. But he still thought about why he hugged her on the bed. Then Alex intervenes in the conversation, who only wanted to say that he just wanted to ask for mercy. And His Majesty himself had already found a way to save their lives. He added that he admired the generosity. But the prince said it wasn't worth it, because it should be so. Even intelligent creatures know how to be grateful, and would not dare mercilessly abandon people to the mercy of fate, who tried so hard for him. The doctor said he would never forget His Highness's mercy, and promised to serve him faithfully until the end. Emma thought about how skillfully the prince manages to hide his true face in the ears of children, with such skill that there is nothing to complain about. It was also unclear to the girl how she realized that it was the doctor who was talking to her. Maybe she understood by his voice. If the prince himself doesn't tell, no one in life will guess it. Emma saw no difference, although she knew about his illness. How could this be? She wondered. Although there might be a difference, Emma believes that when she sees his face clearly, it is easier for her to endure. Perhaps this is why the prince keeps the girl close to him. Here the doctor suddenly reminded himself again. He thought that the girl was doing this to him in a dream. Alex asked the prince if he had seen anything special, but then he realized that there was a dream mistress, and said that it seemed there was only one heroine, and she could save the prince from the curse. The prince began to realize that before it was easier for him to focus his gaze on his interlocutor. His Majesty wondered at what point the doctor realized that he was looking past him. Maybe he had already guessed that the guy couldn't see faces, but it was hard to tell what Alex was thinking, even if he had seen his face. The prince thought that such an ally would not be superfluous, but now he needs them. His Majesty asked Alex about his situation, if the detection magic had found anything. It is unlikely that the doctor would have come here without testing the waters. To which the man replied that of course. The doctor said that the prince is perceptive. It is true that Alex is not that stupid. Everything is clean, perfect for exchanging stories. His Majesty asked Alex to tell him the real reason why he came here. The doctor said that the prince, as always, is one step ahead, even in terms of power and magic. Imperial level, what can I say? Alex continued by saying that it was simply amazing that His Majesty managed to create such illumination in the basement. He missed the sun. This probably required a colossal amount of mana. His Majesty asked to get to the point because they don't have much time. The doctor said that the matter was close because we would talk about mana. The prince himself was interested in this topic. The doctor said he was going to tell His Majesty his master's prophecy, the great sorcerer Marcus. A few days later, Sir Christian returned and asked Mason and the doctor how they got out. To which the prince replied that it was he who rescued them. Emma needed help. After the emperor received the news of the prince's awakening, he said that preparations for the audience were necessary, to which they told him that it would take 3 days. After which His Majesty asked again, because he didn't believe it would take that long. Emma, of course, was stressed by the anticipation of the unknown, but this more than compensated for the fact that she could finally relax. The girl thought she hadn't been so calm for a long time. But then Mason approaches and says that lately the mistress's stomach is sticking out. The boy said he didn't talk about it while she was working, that there was already enough stress. He added that she should eat a balanced diet. Because if you eat so many sweets, you can simply burst. To which the heroine replied that this is not true. She said that no dress would fit the girl at this rate. Mason said to follow His Highness's example, because he got up at dawn and immediately started training. Emma was annoyed and angry at the same time, saying at that moment that she didn't want to train. To which the boy said that the lady was like a little girl. The prince looked at this situation and said that Emma was cute. Mason looked at the heroine and said that then cuteness can do anything. It's cute. She's lucky. While uttering these sentences, the boy laughed. But at that moment, the prince said that the third wheel would deign to leave. Since Emma learned Mel's secret, they have barely spoken. The girl decided not to push the boy away, but within reason. But the only thing she does is test those very limits. But the girl decided to wait until he got better. But then the prince decided to admit that he had slept poorly these past few days. He slept with his eyes open. But the doctor said that His Highness did not have insomnia. He assumed that it was also due to the curse. The boy said that tomorrow he would appear before His Majesty. He couldn't go 3 days without sleep. To which the girl replied that something had to be done. Then the boy said, a dream filled with precious fragments of reality. Emma didn't understand why he called the girl by her full name. The prince said that it was she who woke him up and asked her to take responsibility. To which she replied that she had experience in treating insomnia, but that this was not a one-day matter. The boy said that the girl could stay close until she cured him. To which the heroine asked him if he wanted to sleep together again. The prince asked if the girl had forgotten what she said when she was a surrogate. To which the girl replied that she admits it. But His Majesty said that she is the only dream master in the entire empire. Only she can help now. Emma agreed, but on the condition that the doctor and Mason were present. The boy asked why it was so, if she was sure that it was so necessary, that somehow it was too much. She said that it seemed to her that she would soon see these two in her nightmares. To which the artisan replied that it was fine, that she would take care of the nightmares. After which she told the prince to lie down. Emma told the prince to try to sleep, but he, in turn, said he didn't want to sleep. The girl said that you must try. Close your eyes, even if you only half fall asleep. Then she will be able to put him to sleep completely. The boy said that nothing worked. The girl offered the boy a stuffed toy, but he invited her to lie down with him anyway. His strength requires direct contact with the object. The heroine said that she remembered how she used to put Mason to sleep with this method when she was a child. She hoped that would help and then asked Mel to close his eyes. The girl began to sing a lullaby, and the boy at that moment thought it would be better to faint than to listen to this. Suddenly, the boy heard the girl snoring and realized that she said she would put him to sleep. But in the end, she herself fell asleep. But she said that cuteness can do anything. So he decided to take a sleeping pill. Now he will have to go like this, he won't fall asleep. Then suddenly, a voice appears asking where he wants to go. To ruin everything again. He will have a meeting with his father. He will be able to prove something to him or flee like last time. That voice said that he couldn't protect the poor girl Marcel. That he would mess up again or get rid of his father with his own hands. The prince thought it was only for his father. And if the prince lost her, he would definitely kill his father and destroy everything, even his own heart. Then the girl shouted loudly so that no one would do this. But she said something about the pudding that Joe took. The boy looked at the girl bewildered. The prince stroked the girl's cheek. He even wondered who Joe was. The girl said in a dream that Joe shouldn't eat her pudding. Otherwise, she would rip off his little hands. Mel looked at the girl and thought she was just a ray of light, and that he would protect her at all costs. At any price. The prince said he would be back soon. But the sleepy heroine didn't understand if the prince had really said anything to her or not. The girl called Mason loudly and asked him how to understand this. Mason said everyone was sick of it. They decided to put him to sleep and throw him on the bed. He was talking about the boy who was lying on the bed. The girl asked who it was. This is an acting teacher from the palace. He was sent here for being unnecessary. Since the heir regained consciousness, the prince approached his father and asked him to start telling the story. He hoped it was worth the 3 days of waiting. His Majesty asked the prince if he understood that it was stupid to distrust someone, and then told him not to show his weakness to anyone. The emperor's words left a huge mark on the prince's subconscious, a mark that left an imprint on his vision of this world. Really, everything comes down to striving to achieve one's goal. Is this the key to success and happiness? The emperor asked the prince if he saw greatness in this, to which he replied that it was trampling on those around him. Until now, the boy did not have the courage to confront him about it directly. He preferred to consume himself in doubts, rejecting everything he could. And in the end, he simply fled from reality. But now the prince said he was determined to trust, to protect his only ray of light in the darkness. He will no longer flee, neither from the world's grayness nor from his father. While the prince was sitting, he wondered how many knights would be there. 3 or 4. He thought about the fact that the emperor hid 4 Gryden knights at a banal tea party with his son, and whether it would be easier to get rid of him immediately. The emperor said that it seemed the prince had not yet recovered from his awakening. The boy thought that there was poison in the tea again, since the taste of the tea was a bit strange. But His Majesty replied that he had recently tasted a new variety. He asked to create it and received it. It was similar, but only partially. The boy had the feeling that they simply threw herbs at him. The emperor said he would have to find out how this happened, that they would still meet today. The emperor invited the prince to tell him, and waited that it was worth the 3 days of waiting. The prince replied that, just as his father had told him, he had not yet fully recovered from sleep. This means that the curse still has power over the boy. But His Majesty asked him how he understood this. The prince explained that he felt better in the presence of the dream master. He asked his father if he remembered the prophecy obtained by Emperor Luca's VII, to which His Majesty replied yes. The boy said he believes they are talking about a descendant of the sorcerer. Perhaps the dream mistress is the key to this riddle. To which the emperor asked his son if he was joking. The father asked Mel if he doubted his emperor's interpretation. It was all nonsense. His Majesty said that if blood is needed, they will simply execute her, to which the prince asked what the logic would be. Then they would repeat the same mistakes. The emperor said that the mistake was that Luke did not find that descendant of the devil's blood. And if she is his offspring, then there can be no mistake. That's why, the father said, she needed to be executed immediately. To which the boy replied that if they killed her, they might completely cut off his path to salvation. The emperor said that Mel had never learned to hide his emotions. So enough useless talk. And then he asked Mel if that was all. The prince thought that, in other words, the emperor hinted that he should show him a trump card. The prince thought so he asked what about the words of the wizard Marcus. The emperor said he was crazy. And as soon as His Majesty ascended the throne, he immediately disappeared somewhere. Why listen to him? The prince explained that he might be crazy, but he is a good magician and prophet. All his prophecies so far have come true. The emperor said that this was of no use to him, because he had been dead for a long time, and he had left no prophecy. To which the prince replied that he thought so too. But it turned out that it wasn't him at all. In that case, there is someone who knows all his prophecies. A student. Some of the teacher's notes still exist. They are right in Alex's head. The prince asked the doctor what kind of prophecy he was mentioning, to which he replied that he would tell him now. As everyone knows, mana is a resource. Like any resource, it has a total reserve, but it cannot be measured. No one knows how much mana is left, and when it will run out. No one except Marcus. Marcus found a way to measure mana, and found it out, but then the prince interrupted him, saying that at the current rate of mana consumption, it would completely disappear in about 30 years. He also said that before his death, the master stocked up on mana stones, since he foresaw his disappearance and was preparing for it. But the emperor said that the doctor only wanted to live, and that's why he made 3 boxes for them. To which the guy replied that this could be checked by sending people to the place he was talking about. The father said that even if they find magic stones there, this will not be proof. But the prince, in response, asked what would happen then. Why the great wizard needs mana reserves? Because he has no heirs. The emperor was reflecting on what that psychopath actually discovered behind his back. He was only 30 years old and had little time left. The empire is kept under magical control without mana. A crisis or even a rebellion awaits. And people who depend on magic, even in everyday life, will lose peace. The world will be threatened because those who do not depend on mana will remain in it. And master talents will remain with them even if mana completely disappears. Even before the student's testimony, the prince investigated this topic because he suspected a problem. Thanks to him, he only remembered it. The prince asked to be allowed to share his findings with His Majesty. The prince did not want to say this before becoming emperor. But there was no other way out. He said that, firstly, there are proofs in the ancient language, even before the island's capture. According to the scientist who devoted his life to investigating the origins of magical power, the very concept of mana comes from the name of the island. Secondly, ancient manuscripts state that this land is connected with the bearers of its power, the inhabitants of Frodberg, and reacts to their moods and desires as if resonating with them. Alex said that the professor's notes confirm it. It says that the mana reserves are rapidly evaporating. The master wrote that no matter how many magic stones he had, in the end, nothing would be left. But if he managed to restore that island, mana could return again, as soon as the indigenous tribe returns to the Holy Land and imbues it with emotions. That is, leaving them the southern island, and leaving them in peace. The future of the empire coexisting with the island masters is rosier. To which the ruler replied that this is nonsense. The emperor said they must be kept chained. Only then will they not dare to cross the boundaries of what is allowed. That is total control. The prince then asked what they will do when this chain disappears. Total control awaits them as soon as the mana disappears. The emperor said that of course they would try to trample them. But what could they do? They were a minority. The prince wondered if his father could hear him. The emperor added, saying that they were savages scattered in a foreign land with useful skills. That's why the prince did not try to discuss this with His Highness. There is nothing to talk about with him at all. Marcel said they shouldn't waste their lives in vain. Right? He asked, but thought in his head that saving people was the top priority. The ruler agreed with his son. But he didn't think Mel would prepare so well that he needed to properly interrogate the doctor, in case he was lying. The emperor said he didn't know if the curse was involved or not, but that if the prince felt better in the girl's presence, then he would forgive her. He had no other choice. He added that he would forgive her until the prince was completely cured of his illness. But in the meantime, he needed to establish new contact with the Dream Master. The prince said that the people of Frodberg still pose a threat to them. But that doesn't mean they are useless, even if they work for now. But the ruler told Marcel not to get involved in this, to which he replied that he understood. His Majesty thought that the guy was still a weakling, but he was already looking him in the eye and shouting, "Now His Majesty will have to worry about something more than tea." The prince said he would still like to add a point. Emma asked Alex and Mason to unhook her, but one said he would hit him, and the second said he was busy. But then a knight entered the room, and he didn't understand what was happening here again. The knight helped the girl free herself, for which she thanked him, but he couldn't understand how she eats while in a vice. Christian told the girl that she seemed obsessed with starving people, to which she replied that it was necessary to eat, even in the face of death. The heroine added that if she starves to death, her ghost will not leave the master in peace. She will cling worse than the actress. But Christian asked to stop talking about ghosts. The knight warned the girl that she was being summoned to the imperial palace and told her to prepare. This was an order from His Highness. Emma asked if she was the only one who needed to get there, and what would happen to the others. Then Christian took out the papers and said that His Majesty had decided to postpone the sentence of all of them, and therefore he drafted a new contract. Emma was glad to have been so lucky because they wouldn't be executed yet. Christian asked to simplify his face, to which the girl asked the boy if he was afraid that, when the girl turned into a ghost, she would haunt him with that face. The boy asked the girl why she was threatening him. She thought about how crazy he was. He couldn't even joke. The knight said again that His Majesty delayed the verdict. So he drafted a new contract. But this time he told Mason and Alex. The knight explained that all the details were specified in the personal contracts of each one, and said they could familiarize themselves. Emma praised the prince in her thoughts, and said that she knew he would succeed. The girl was reading the paper the knight brought and, not understanding it, she read part of the text where it was written about the relative resettlement of the inhabitants of Fruitburg. It is difficult to continue discussing this topic, because now is not the time. But the importance of masters for the empire will increase, and the most talented will receive titles. Emma was thinking about what titles His Majesty would give to the lands and castles. He was a tyrant. Mason shouted because he was now a great-on knight. Christian said he was just an intern. But the boy was very happy about it. For the heroine, this was quite unexpected. There were not so many rights. But still, the attitude improved. But then Emma reached the points where it is written that until the crown prince is completely cured, the dream mistress is forbidden to leave the imperial palace as long as the patient shows even the slightest symptoms of illness. The mistress must not leave the patient. Every night she needs to be present in his bedroom for the therapy to continue. Emma wondered what it was. If he really wrote this, it looked like someone else's handwriting. The knight asked the girl to sign the paper, to which she replied that, as if she had another choice. It was an order drafted in the form of a contract. This enraged the girl. The knight said this would be the last one, and asked the girl to come with him. He asked to put on the jewelry himself, and not to take them off for a second. Alex said that this is an artifact on which a spell is cast on its location. If the girl tries to leave the imperial palace, or wants to get rid of the artifact, it will explode immediately. The emperor also said that she would burn a little if she violated the rules, or the agreement. At that moment, the doctor joked that then they would gracefully leave. And the girl asked the boys if the acting teacher was asleep. The girl asked the knight how much longer it would take to do this, to which Christian replied that a couple of weeks ago. But Emma remembered that he said the same thing a few weeks ago. It turns out that from the beginning, he didn't intend to get rid of her. But then he would scare the loan. The knight said that he still had to help Mason and Alex to move out, and then the heroine would be escorted by the maid who was waiting inside. She had no choice but to agree. Upon arriving at the palace and looking at it, Emma thought she had already seen it in dreams. Someone behind her told her that they were very tired of waiting for her. It was two sweet maids who informed Emma that from now on they would attend to her. Emma was completely bewildered by the current situation. Before meeting His Highness, the maids dragged Emma to put her in order quickly. Her eyes continued to show confusion as to why this order was given. The servant suggested starting the transformation with a bath, which Emma clearly did not like. They dried her, combed her hair properly, and dressed her in a lemon-colored dress. But for Emma's image to be perfect and ideal, the maid suggested taking off the necklace. Refusing to take off the necklace, the maids escorted Emma to His Majesty's chambers, slightly bowing her head. His Majesty warmly greeted Emma, but she felt nervous being close to him, even though they had recently conversed as equals. He was stunned by her beauty and could not hide it. He immediately said how beautiful she was. But then he added that she was not only beautiful, but incredibly beautiful.